Welcome to the Independent Characters, episode 238. This is Carl.
This is Josh.
And this episode, we're going to be talking about the lost and the damned.
That's right.
And this is a concept that I came up with for the show prior to the new codex for Chaos being leaked. And boy, was I happy when I saw what had leaked. Yeah. So I'm in a good space with that Chaos Codex, I think. And
is it
getting mine this Sunday?
Not Codex 3.5, but now we're like 3.99.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's got like a lot of variety to
Going
it.
back to the future.
But one of the things it does is support this kind of list. So we'll go through kind of the history of the Lost and the Damned, what they are, where they've been, when they've actually been a list, and then what you can kind of do with it now. So I expect this to be a little bit of a shorter episode, certainly shorter than last episode, which I think ran around 3 hours, 3+ hours.
3+.
That was a heifer. This one will be a little bit shorter, which is good because our next episode is probably going to be a bit longer.
Yeah.
As we finally
deep dive
into the
Leagues of Votann.
We're going to do a show of force Leagues of Votann.
Their squat history into the Leagues of Votann as we know today.
We're going to have Dave Taylor on the show with us.
The man, the myth, the legend.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. All right. So I'm excited about that. Okay. So I want to throw out real quick. This episode is sponsored by Fat Lamcaster. PH Fat
with a PH.
Fat Lamcaster and Colin Valentine, who are two of our Patreon members, and thank you guys so much. We super appreciate it. I assume Fat Lamcaster is a guy. I could be. I should not assume.
Doesn't matter.
I should not assume. Doesn't matter. The money still spends. Thank you guys so much. We super appreciate all the support we're getting through the Patreon, and we owe a few things on that too. We know, so we're getting to it. So, and then the other thing I just want to mention again, real quick, we are part of the Goonhammer Media Network again, so you can check out goonhammer.com, media.goonhammer.com as well to go specifically for more shows and information and that kind of stuff. So, pretty excited about that.
There's a wide gamut of games that are covered there and approaches to games too.
Yeah, for sure.
Super competitive, like which we obviously don't do. Check them out and you find somebody if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, and so we already did the explanation. I'm going down the bullet points. Already did show concept explanation, but I also wanted to go over a couple more reviews. We went over them last time. I put out the call and boy, did some people answer. So I really do appreciate that. And these are all from iTunes. The majority of these from the US this time. One from Crunkbeard says we're the best 40K podcast. I appreciate that. The show is the best 40K podcast out there. It is relevant and entertaining, and the hosts are some of the most humble, honest, and nicest people in this podcast space. Highly recommended. Well, thank you very much.
He's right. We are the most humble.
Super humble.
Which I'm now bragging that we're humble, which is...
Shut up.
Fair enough.
And then another one from, I wonder who this is. Bento Box 722.
I think that's Austin Lynn.
Thanks, Austin.
Yeah.
Good to have the show back. Short, to the point, 5 stars. I'm happy with that one. Hazul, casual content, professional production. I put that all to Josh's cinematography. If you're watching on YouTube.
Hey, you run point on audio, though.
The Independent Characters podcast makes you feel like part of Carl, Josh, and the Independent Character Cast gaming group. Mission accomplished.
Yeah,
that's what we set out to do. Why you should listen. Episodes are planned out with thoughtful consideration and research given to each topic. Carl, the main host, I would say co-host at this point, prides himself on providing unique content and more often than not succeeds.
You're the main host. Let's be honest.
Occasionally, I do not succeed. Although they would claim they aren't professional podcasters, the production quality is professional level. You truly feel like a part of their gaming group. Why you might not want to listen if you are looking for hardcore competitive content, this probably isn't the podcast for you. Agreed.
Fair. Absolutely.
Not gonna tell you differently. They also do not do codex reviews. No, we don't.
Yep.
We do show of force episodes, unit by unit tactics, etc. Personally, I feel like there's a place in the IC's podcast, in everyone's podcast rotation. I highly recommend the show. Thank you very much, Hazul.
Yeah.
Finch 1988. keep agreeing with each other, he says. Or they say. Long time, of course, they're Canadian. Long time Canadian listener. Pumped they are back. Highly recommend for a positive take on the hobby. We need more Carl's love of Formula One. You know, in our Discord channel, there is a channel for Formula One where we chat about after every race. So, you know, if you're into Formula One, that's the place to go.
That's where it's at.
If you're into nerds and gaming in Formula One, there's a Venn diagram.
The Venn diagram.
Yeah.
It's a very niche slice of this overlapping diagram.
Yeah.
But there's something there.
And then H. Griffin says the best 40K pod for non-competitive players. Totally agree again.
Yeah.
In the grim dark world of podcasts about 40K, Carl and Company are my go-to podcast for all things Warhammer. It's so nice to listen to a couple of folks talk about the things they love in the way I love it too. They are interested in all aspects of the game and the hobby. I agree. They're not elite players, nope, or hobbyers. Well, no, I'm not. Josh is more elite hobbyer than I am. And Justin's an elite hobbyer.
I read that as elitist more than elite specifically.
Okay.
But yeah.
Justin's an elite hobbyer, I'll tell you that. Or anything else. We're not elite at anything else. All right. They're just fans of the world, the community, and the fun. I listen to a lot of podcasts about 40K, and the independent characters is easily my favorite. I super appreciate that. Thank you again, everybody who left reviews.
Yeah.
We really do appreciate it. It does go a long way. So,
and for those of you, this is a little bit of a tangent, but if anybody really wants to hear about competitive 40K from 5th and 6th edition, let us know. Carl at theindependentcharacters.com and Josh at theindependentcharacters.com.
From 5th and 6th, that was when we were playing tournaments.
That's the last tournament I won was 6th edition.
I never won a tournament, but I always placed middle of the pack.
Yeah.
And then my paint scores would kind of bounce me up a little
sportsmanship.
bit. I always won sportsmanship. Not always, but I would frequently be in the competition for sportsmanship.
You were a great person to play a game against.
And I did win best painted one time. But again, I got the Forge World bump for my Death Guard, and people hadn't seen it before.
And the grungy Death Guard.
That was
it's still a good looking.
I still love it. Yeah. I don't need to play Death Guard anymore. Too many people play it.
As soon as it was in a box set, and I was super excited.
No
a special snowflake
when they announced that. We were at Adepticon when they announced that, and I was like, "Oh my god, yes!" And then, "Oh my god, it invalidated my entire army."
Right? Yeah,
I was like, crap.
Also that.
So anyway, all right. Well, Lost in the Dam. Let's talk about elite choice.
Yes,
Josh. And my elite choice here is, and I'm gonna try not to butcher this name. I practiced it a couple times. Aditya Mahalangam Dhingra and his Ultramarines.
Yes.
Holy cow.
Gorgeous.
I love them. Shell, we talked about this. She said, "Oh, did you see that?" I said, "Oh yeah." And she goes,
yeah.
I didn't think you'd pick this because of the orange in it and the glow effect from the sword has a bit of orange in it. And I'm not a huge fan of orange. Like, even when I do like my reds,
you don't like any of my armies.
I steer clear of orange. Listen, they're painted very well. It's not a color choice I would have made. That being said, when Colin Ward painted those Eldar and he had painted that orange, that did look pretty sick.
Guess what I'm painting my Eldar like?
Yeah.
Very much inspired by that Colin's paint job.
It looked good.
Yeah.
So I just orange, like I'm such a finicky red person too. Like warm colors are really, but anyway, couple of things I really like about this. I really like the technique he used, which is kind of reminiscent of almost like comic book art in a way. There were a couple of classes at Adepticon on how to paint like that. But it just super works for what he did here. And I actually think the orange really makes a nice, stark contrast against the blue. I mean, look, nobody's arguing that blue and orange don't go well together.
Classic color theory, right?
Yeah, it looks fantastic.
Yep.
And,
and then the white on top of that.
And the hand-painted, like, Ultramarine logo and everything looks freaking cool about this army. And, man, facing off across an army, across the table that looked like this.
Gorgeous force. Yeah, I love the weathering, too. It's all It's not that I can see sponge weathering. It's all like painted on, chipping, scratches. You've got like the depth of that with some darkness into that, and then highlighting the scratches to make it look more visually deep than it is, because it's just paint. But really nicely done.
And the basing, I mean, it's a fairly standard like basing. You know, it looks like probably cork and the grass, but I mean, it works with the color of the whole thing.
Yep.
So fantastic work, just absolutely beautiful stuff, and I think everybody that looked at it was like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. And I will say,
sure.
I actually put in here a couple runners up because once again, we hit a kind of peak period where like the stuff people were posting, and I had selected this fairly early on.
Yeah.
I need to wait. I need to like wait till we get closer to the end, because
a day or two before
this got posted, and no slam on this. Like, I love it. But then some other stuff got posted, and I was like, oh, I might have chosen that, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So, okay, So I went
with Bill Morlock and his gorgeous Sons of Medusa Terminators. This is yet another addition to them. Specifically, why I'm calling this one out again, not only because it's shot on beautiful Necromunda terrain, which I'm a sucker for. Sons of Medusa is one of my favorite paint schemes for Marines. Just that vibrant green and white, just something about that color and contrast combination works so well. Yeah. But what Bill does on the shoulder pads specifically is really, really what kind of sold me on this one for my choice here, is that there's kind of a very strong edge highlight of almost a neon green. It's like a bright scorpion kind of green there. Yes. But then it's kind of inverted vignettes. So we have really bright light on the top of those shoulder pads, and then it gets darker as you go down, but then you still have this really nice, just kind of like it's framed by a pretty bold edge highlight in there. Yeah. And with that, again, that color, and then the chapter icon and the white helmets, and just a nice subtle OSL on the lightning claws of these Terminators. It's so cohesive. And I like that he's going with a little bit kind of grittier, darker feel for this force that he's working on in general, but it's absolutely gorgeous. I love Bill's work, and this is yet another fantastic addition. And
Doug, before he passed, he was working on that Sons of Medusa army. Yeah. I almost kept that one.
They are gorgeous.
Yeah, they're fantastic looking, but I kept his Space Wolves instead, just, as a like emotional kind of tribute thing. But man, I almost kept these because he did such a beautiful job. It's a great color scheme.
It is a great color scheme.
Yeah. All right. Next was Shell's Kiss.
Yes.
Boom. So Alex Lowmaster's Relic Kratos tank.
Yes.
My God. Like, okay, so first off, let me give you Shell's comments here. She loved the attention to details and the edging. Like and I told her, like, when she was talking about, you can see all the white edging or metallic edging around
all the weathering, the scraping.
Yeah.
The paint is scraped down to metallics.
Yeah. And I told her, this is actually not that hard to do. And she goes, yeah, but it looked like it took a lot of time and patience. And she said, and we'll get to hobby progress, but she goes, after I've been painting the edges on my Night Lords, like, I appreciate this a lot more.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, this is like, then I took a second look at it. Like, this was very time consuming.
Yeah. That's a huge tank.
Yeah, it's a huge tank, but also he spent time individually. Like, it's not the fine detail lining, but he had to pick out a lot of areas. This is not just like dry brush or sponge. Like, this is
right.
This is done with a brush.
It's all painted on.
This took a long time, and man, does it look really good. And the color scheme, of course, for the Celestial Lions is just
gorgeous,
amazing. The flag in the background, the banner in the background looks good. Like, banner, just it is such a striking looking vehicle.
I love the striping of the weathering at the very front on that grill there, which is clearly like it's run something over, and it's kind of like ridden up the tank a little bit. Just, it's such a nice attention to how something would scrape up the front of the tank that way if it was in between the treads, just getting kind of fed up the middle.
And not only that, on the flat surfaces, some of the flat surfaces, he's done like mud, like it's very brave, because I got to get over this. Like, a weathered army always looks so good.
Yep.
So good. It just really, really makes a lot of it pop, but it's got like, the little, I want to say tassel, but it's not a tassel. what do you call it?
the purity seal?
The
Yeah,
purity
coming off
seal.
the,
The long
off the
purity
turret.
seal
Yeah.
coming off, blowing in the wind and like just everything is very cool about this, man. So
Absolutely.
yeah, Shell really loved this. She said, you should have taken creative license and gone purple and yellow. Purple being her favorite color. She said, could you imagine if a kid painted this purple and yellow? Yeah, I can't imagine a kid painting it.
No, I can't. But
I think now normally Shell's Kiss doesn't get a check mark towards the Hall of Legends thing, but I think this one needs to get a check mark towards that.
extra worthy.
Yeah, I mean, there's just too many good looking things this time around in the group for us to pick them out. And this came out after I'd picked what I had picked, but Shell picked this separate of my choice, but I may have picked this had I seen this. So I think this one gets a check, Josh. You're tracking.
All
those,
worthy. Yep.
So then there's a couple runner-ups. I don't have pictures on it, but I wanted to mention Sean McCarry's Deathwing Land Raider, which was called out by
Dan Boyd
last episode, but
this
it's
is now
finished now.
completed and incredible.
He nailed it.
Yep.
He nailed it. I think I mentioned with Dan, like you're at risk with that unit in particular of it looking very Christmassy because it has white, green, and red.
Right.
It does not.
Not at all.
Nah, he nailed it. He nailed it. Paul Ives Deathwing Dreadnought also.
That was a really good looking dread.
Good God.
That was a Ballistus, if I recall. I think it was
it's
a
the
Ballistus.
bigger one. I can't.
Maybe it was a Redemptor.
What do I care? It's not Chaos. If they come out in Chaos, I'll remember its name. But Jesus, that thing looked great too.
Great looking dreadnought.
Tom Garrett's Rhino.
This was the Thousand Suns.
The Thousand Suns Rhino.
The Rubik's Cube, as he called, which I appreciate the name.
Yeah, it looks really cool. I normally I'm not criticized. I don't get critical. The one piece of it that I think he could have gone like one little more step was the headlights. He chose a pink color for the headlights. Fine, like not the color I would have chose, but it works. But I think he was doing an OSL, and I think he missed like a couple steps. Like he could have done a darker pink than that pink, then
just a little bit more feathering in
and a little white, like for where the just lighten it up where the headlight itself is.
Sure,
but like conceptually, I think it's cool.
Yeah, yeah.
And the rest of that tank is just phenomenal looking. And then Cameron Mancini also posted a picture of a tank he was working on, and it was his first experimentation with AK Interactive Streaking Grime. Not a sponsor, but I have not used that yet. But as I've been talking about weathering, he had done oil. I think he said he'd done oil washes before, but used this and thought it was really cool to use. Yeah. Although he said the fumes from it are pretty strong, so be aware of that. So.
I've been using more of the rust effect. Jody talked about it a bit when he was talking about his Inquisitor stuff. I've used it for a couple of projects now, just those rust effects, and they smell like cancer, but they work so well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just crack a window, turn a fan on, and enjoy.
All right, so that's it for Elite Choice. So let's go into Hobby Progress. And Josh, I think you're starting this off. Nope, I am.
Nope.
This game's played. You're starting off.
All right.
All I really did, well, that's not true. I did a couple things, but this is for the video, folks. This is the only video I have. I assembled the Dark Commune box set and the Accursed Cultist box set.
Yeah.
Partially because I was thinking about this, Lost in the Damned at the time, so I got kind of excited about it. I was like, I'm going to put these guys together,
These are from the big Kill Team box, or did you end up selling that and just buying the Warband separate?
Oh, I had these in separate boxes. Okay. When Chaos came out, I bought kind of one of everything.
Yeah.
This is one set I've had sitting in a box and haven't used. The mutants of the Accursed Cultists are just awesome looking.
They're so different.
They're twisted.
They're really cool.
Couple other things I did. In the purchase area, I purchased the Blooded Kill Team, which is the Trader Guard kill team.
Okay.
Again, in theme with what we're doing here.
Yep.
I finally purchased Vasher the Archifane. I've got plans for that. I've always got plans, right? We'll see if that comes out. I bought some stuff from Green Stuff World to help me make like the tentacles off of him, and I bought some sculpting tools for Green stuff for that.
Did you get the
for that whole project?
What is it? The white metallic, like bass guitar kind of style?
I haven't got that yet. No, I need to buy some of that too. And then let's see. Aaron passed me an Orlok gang box, so I can use that, as Dan talked about last episode, to also work up a few Trader Guard guys from that.
Absolutely.
that kit. And then Shell became frustrated with me this week for not helping. Or, as I was kind of cleaning the room and everything, she goes, when are we going to work on my Night Lords again? I go, listen, they're your Night Lords,
You tell me.
And so she was like, well, I want to work on them this weekend. I said, okay. So we pulled them out. We pulled out a painting table, like a folding table, and, set ourselves up. And then we started going to work. And she goes, well, what are we supposed to do next? And I said, okay, so you have to, we've got all the purple on these guys. Following Caleb's recipe.
Yeah.
We now need to where all the eventual gold edging will go. You want to go over all that edging with the black.
The Abaddon black.
No. Well, no, actually the Caleb recommended using the speed paint, from the war paint
Black
line.
Temper black.
Yeah.
Or
the black
Army Painter speed paint.
Yeah, the Army Painter speed paint or the contrast black to go over that. And this is really interesting because why do that if you're just going to, and the gold I use
appreciating
goes right over it just fine.
Yeah.
But what it does is it flows into, so if you look at the edging on the Chaos Marines, it's raised. And so what this will do is it will flow into kind of the lower edge of it.
Yeah.
So that there's a little bit of black along the lower edge of it, which means when you go over in gold, you don't necessarily have to really work to get that edge down there. Even if you make a mistake, it's just black under it. So it kind of outlines it. As I explained to Shell, it outlines it like a comic book.
It's shadowing it. Yeah. It's lining it. And that's very similar to what an oil wash would do. But since you're not oil washing, it's a great step to go. Yeah.
And so we spent, an hour and a half doing that, and we got all of them done.
Nice.
And so the next step is we're going to move on to the golds.
Yeah.
And so again, I think when we got to the Kratos tank, Shell was like, okay, I really appreciate how much time this took. And I'm like, well, and the thing is, she wants to play very much, and she wants to play that army.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, well, we don't have to have it painted. Like I will play you and we can, but if we're going to go somewhere and play, you're going to want to have it painted. She goes, well, I want it painted. I said, okay,
yeah,
well,
of course.
Yeah. I said, so let's focus on like 1,000 points, and then you and I can team game somewhere while we work on the rest of the army.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly kind of what you and I did. And because we can knock out 1,000 points relatively quickly.
Yeah. That's a weekend.
Okay. Easy there, Tiger.
A dedicated weekend.
But I also told her, there's also a philosophy that Paul Rudge, handed down to me, which was, I go, how do you get all this done? He goes, I just do it an hour a night.
Yep.
I just work on it an hour a night. There's even a group started by James out in Hawaii, at 1 hour a night group. But if you can just carve out an hour a day or every other day or whatever, you will be amazed at how much progress you can make. So yeah, we're focusing on that. Get the troops done first.
Yep, perfect.
And then move on to the next thing.
Did Shell do any of the airbrushing on that, or is it?
She did a little bit.
Nice.
She did a little bit. She's still, I think, a little intimidated by the airbrush. But I will do the airbrushing on her Demon Prince.
Okay.
And so I think we've got an HQ. We got two troops choices there, and then we'll figure out. She wants Possessed in there, so okay, we'll do those next. But then maybe we'll throw a vehicle, or we got Terminators in there too, so maybe we just do Terminators.
Yeah,
and get them a vehicle like a Land Raider
pretty quickly.
Boom,
you're at a Land Raider that'll get you to 1,000 real quick.
But now we're at 1,000 points. I can focus on other things, and she can play that, and then we can
learn how to play, get your reps in.
She said she wants to play 10 games before she plays with somebody else, and I said that's very reasonable. I can understand that. And then that's when I threw out, well, we could also do a team game, and then I'm right there next to you, because she gets a little stressed out about holding people up.
We're all
which we all
playing
do.
Friendly games that
but still she doesn't want to be
any
the
of
one.
us would be happy to play.
But I think if I run her through a bunch of games and we play repeatedly, she'll go, okay, I finally, she goes, it can't be 10 games over 6 months. That won't do anything for me. I go, yeah, I agree.
You got to get quick succession to lock it. We'll wait till the new codex drops out, so you're in the new stats and rules and stuff, and then just hammer it.
So okay. Nice. What about you?
Yeah. So similarly, I've done a handful of small things, but the big one I did was I finished the Necromunda Outcast gang.
Oh, you've got the gal from the Black
That's Victoria Miniatures. So that was the.
I'm talking about the one on the right in the red
Yes.
is from the Blackstone Fortress.
Curse City.
Oh, Curse City.
Yeah.
Curse City. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Oh,
So
yeah, I painted her.
This is a outcast gang for Necromunda using the outcast gang rules. My gang leader is the Victoria Miniatures. It was the Adepticon mini.
Oh, it's
And when
great.
I saw that, I was like, is this going to be perfect? So last episode, Dan was talking about his Orlocks being in the ugly phase for a really long time. This, as you'll notice, because it's an outcast gang, I didn't have a cohesive color theme at all. So I really, and that's intentional. I wanted to look more ragtag and kind of thrown together. So there was like 40 colors that I ended up using in this to paint this gang. So
Which, by the way, slows you down.
it slowed me down considerably. And by and large, I was using Army Painter Fanatic paints, but I don't have a full range of that. So I don't have like the natural, the triads that they're designed to be sold in. So like I wasn't shading and then basing and then highlighting. So I had to mix my own highlights for a lot of these, which was, fine and fun.
How did you find them coating and stuff? The Fanatics?
They coat incredibly well. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. The coating is really good. The pigmentation is incredible. The work time is nice. Even if you're not using a wet palette, they just stay
Did you see
wet
the
longer.
commercial that like Adam and that guy made where he was like,
Something about his mom?
Yeah, he's like, you got paint all over
paint
your
on his
hands.
hand. Yes, I did. Yeah, that was pretty fun.
It was good.
They're having fun with it.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
This looks so good.
Yeah, so it's coming together. I need to do a couple of things still. I did do the proper black rim on the bases since the photo was taken. I got some hazard stripes going on the chain swords.
They look good too.
I'm going to add some blood effects to the chain swords and like the little hand maul and axe.
We'll talk about how it plays in a little bit.
Yeah. I did take them for a test drive also, as we'll get to in a minute. So that was the big thing. Since we're kicking off our Necromunda Outlands campaign next week, I needed to.
Oh my God, I
needed to get this gang finished.
I got my gang put together.
So next week. I got them across the finish line just in time.
Right on.
A week to spare, and I'll add the blood effects, and I'll touch up just a couple of like the eyes and things like that.
They look great.
Yeah, thanks.
That Victoria miniature really works.
It fits well, right?
Yeah.
And definitely, she's got good gravitas and presence, but it also ties in. And I like that she's just slightly taller than everybody else.
Yeah.
Everything else being the official GW kits for.
But it's not noticeable. It's like she's just tall.
She's tall. She's the leader. She's got big old boots on.
Yeah.
I do want to tone down.
I'm sorry, you said big old boots? Boots. Oh, okay. Just checking.
I want to tone down the power sword glow just a little bit, bring a little bit more of the handle in there. That one went a little bit too far too quickly.
I have that happen
it's
too.
All power. But yeah, overall, very happy with how this gang's turning out.
Looks great.
Yeah. Thanks.
Looks great. All right. Anything else hobby progress wise?
I've been continuing to build my Eldar Combat Patrol in prep for the Tacoma Open. So I've got about 2 months to get this done, just shy of 2 months now.
It's not long.
I have the Guardians built. I have the Farseer built. I have half the jet bikes built. So I just have 3 jet bikes to build and then the Wraithseer, and then it's built. I'm taking my time, my sweet time building it, making sure like mold lines are not a thing. I really want this to be a gorgeous army when it's done.
Well, then can I recommend something other than orange? No, I'm just kidding.
But I am very much inspired by Colin's.
Yeah, his Eldar looked amazing.
Which since the first time I saw those, I was like, oh my God.
And he used like a template on like a pattern thing on them to get
for the jet bikes and vehicles. Yeah.
Look, are you going to try to do that?
Yep.
Nice.
Yep. I've got all my paints.
Dude.
I've got my stencils. I'm ready to go for it.
Stencils aren't chaos either. That's why I couldn't remember.
So one of the reasons that I'm taking a little bit longer building the jet bike specifically is because the Combat Patrol has things loaded out a little bit differently than you'd probably run it in most games. So I am magnetizing all the weapon options on both the Wraith Lord and the jet bikes, just so I can have a fully WYSIWYG legal Combat Patrol, but then also run it how you're more likely to run it in a normal game. And then continuing on the Sharkadons, I've been prepping the bases. So I mentioned a couple episodes ago that I 3D printed out all the exhaust plumes for the Assault Intercessors with Jump Pack, the jump jet exhaust. The bases that I'm using have a bunch of little rivets built into them. So I'm actually having to sand the rivets off so that the jump jets will lay smooth.
Okay.
Just how they attach. So just been doing a little prep work on those, get ready to go there. And I'm very excited to actually get back to the Sharks and get that going. I do have a little time crunch on the Eldar, so that's going to just pull a little bit of focus for priority. But I keep playing with lists for the Sharkanons and like got a couple options that I'm very excited to get across the finish line. And I think with your new Chaos Codex dropping in specifically, like I think we're going to have a lot of really fun games with
I'm
us
looking
two
forward
armies,
to it. 10th for me is in such a great place right now. Like I want to play more games. I'm super jazzed about it.
Likewise.
You mentioned before we started recording and we didn't mention during my hobby progress, you were like, well, I noticed you're doing all this other stuff and not doing your demon engines. Yeah, I need to, like, it's such a critical part of what I'm doing. I need to get them done, but I just ran out of energy for those. But they're on my painting desk. They keep looking at me, and I'm like, okay,
they're close to being done.
I have literally like one leg to do for the gold trim, and then I'm done with the gold trim. Then it's onto the flesh and stuff, and so it's just a matter of
your second least favorite part.
But Colin gave me a really, really good recipe for that skin, but it does take some time. So I'll get to it. I'm excited to have them done, especially considering the Chaos Codex. Like again, this whole theme for a list was just purely from the index cards, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, Chaos Codex has like this really great potential demon engine.
Lots of options.
So I'm pretty stoked about that. Let's talk about games played.
Absolutely.
Josh, you played a game of Necromunda.
I played a game of Necromunda. So
who's that guy?
Me and Craig got together and we played a game of Necromunda this was at the grand opening of Herrick Games' new location in Boulder Creek, across the street from their existing location.
Oh, his new site is fantastic.
So much more space for gaming, especially. Craig hadn't played a game in a couple of years.
Yeah, neither have I.
He is also going to be playing. So he's only played one game ever.
Oh, okay.
Where he's even a step further back. But
okay.
If you want to get a refresher in the next week, let me know.
I do need one. I may even drive up to your house today.
Yeah, we can make that happen. So Craig had only played one game, and it was a couple of years ago for a campaign that didn't happen. I think it was going to be a local store one that didn't actually end up happening.
Your guys look so good.
And this is before they were oil washed or finished or anything there.
So you took them out for a run.
So I took the Outcast gang out. So I didn't bring my Alliance, which is the Cursed City, the mind-locked weird. She's just a psyker that get access to, but there's definitely some big drawbacks for including her.
Right.
One of my guys just might not be able to play in the game that is not injured or anything. It's like, no, he had some bad dreams.
Okay.
So I'm just embracing the scum of this and gonna have a lot of fun with it.
So good.
So Craig was bringing his Enforcers, and he was playing Badlands Enforcers, which have it's a fun little evolution of the Enforcer list, in that they have less restrictions, they're a little bit more open, and they can add some Hive Scum too, which are identical to the Hive Scum that I have in my gang.
What's the reasoning behind Enforcers using Hive Scum?
They are not really a precinct per se anymore. They're really more like out in the thick of things, kind of venturing out there. These are some of Craig's Hive Scum here on the video side of things, which look very similar to the Hive Scum that I have because he's using the same kit for those. But they're kind of not. It's almost like they've been deputized. These guys aren't like the Enforcers aren't good in any way. Like even if you're in the city, like they're working for Lord Helmwar and they're corrupt. It's not like they're just there enforcing the law. They're not Judge Dredd. Like they aren't good people, period.
They're all the traitor judges and Judge.
Right.
In
exactly.
Dredd.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Very similar to that.
Pay us $1 million. We'll take out Judge Dredd.
So we had a really fun game. So we played it's just a little custom scenario I threw together, which I thought would be a good reintroduction to the game, where there was 3 loot crates that were in the kind of middle of the board, 1 dead center, and then 2 off to the side flanks of the middle. So we deploy across from each other. And the objective was to grab a loot crate and drag it back to your kind of deployment zone and score it that way. Because Necromunda really comes to life when you're not just trying to kill each other. You're trying to accomplish something, and you probably need to kill a couple people.
Yeah.
Which I was talking to Craig about this.
More so than even 40K, right?
Yes,
like 40K has those missions but it just feels like those just feel like, oh, I got to go do this. Whereas Necromunda, it feels so personal. You're like, oh, I want to grab this and I want to. Yeah.
So here we were fighting over the loot crate in the center of the table here. And you can just see there's all kinds of people are bleeding out, knocked down. It's just,
for those who don't play Necromunda, a model on its side. Has one and on its back has another.
So you can be prone and pinned. You can be seriously injured.
Right.
You have tokens marking flesh wounds, which you lose a toughness every time you take a flesh wound. When you run out of toughness, you bleed out and you die.
But the position of models is used to indicate.
Yes, it's very similar to Blood Bowl, where depending what state the model's in, will dictate a game state as well. Yeah. I was talking to Craig about this because it's a little interesting in that the way you gain experience in campaigns of Necromunda is very much participating in fights and killing people. Yeah. But the way you win games isn't by killing people. So you get the experience for killing people, but you need, in order to win the game, you need to follow the objective. So it's kind of this interesting juxtaposition that games have, which it's a really good balance if you're, trying to focus on both well enough. But it makes for really fun games. It's such a narrative game. It is the closest thing to an RPG in tabletop form that I think exists.
That they currently have available.
Yeah. And there's so many fun thematic moments. We had a really close game. One of his first shots ended up killing my leader. So it took him out of action and seriously injured a guy right next to my leader. So then I was like, oh, okay, I think that whole that left flank just lost because my leader is the only good ganger in this gang. Everybody else is terrible. But I have weighted numbers. So I have so many gangers that I was able to kind of swarm on the other two sides. And slowly,
I went back and looked after we talked about Necromunda last episode. And I was like, oh, I have, I think 7 guys. I'm like, I'm going to bump that up to 8.
If you, 8, 7,
I dropped one guy.
7 for a Goliath isn't bad.
I dropped one guy and took 2 little.
If you can get 8, you'll probably be happy for that.
Yeah, I think so.
My starting gang was 10 here, which makes it really hard to bottle out too. Bottling is definitely a big part of Necromunda, and that as soon as you have enough people that are injured or out of action,
the gang just runs away.
You'll test, and you're testing. It's the number of bodies that are down basically plus a D6, and if you exceed your starting number, then your guys start taking tests to see if they run away or not.
Right.
So having 10 starting gangers, my bottle is I can't fail until I've lost at least 5 guys.
4 or 5, yeah.
Because you have to
exceed.
I have to exceed a 10,
5.
so I have to have at least 5 guys that are either injured or out of action.
Well, that's why I just give my guys hardened will or whatever.
You just tank it. It's totally fine.
That's right.
I just have a lot of terrible guys that are very easy to kill, but I've got lots of them. So I got very lucky in that Craig actually got very unlucky in his bottle check. This is turn 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And then his cool checks are actually pretty high. So it's statistically unlikely that he's going to fail. And he ends up failing several of these bottle tests. So
I think Craig and I should play.
Yeah. It's I think end of turn 4 or 5, he had one guy left who hadn't run away. And then that guy ends up running away. And
called it. Yeah.
And at that point, when he only had one guy left, I was very easily able to grab the loot crates and start dragging them back to my deployment zones. Right. One of the crates did explode, which is always fun, which knocks people over. And I think that the guy in the blue with the chainsword on the ground down there got knocked off the edge.
Because you can fall as well.
There are falling conditions. Yep. You take an initiative check, and if you fail, you fall, and you take a hit from the blast.
It's way more crunchy of a game than Warhammer.
Yeah, it is. But when you only have, again, most gangs are going to have 8 models. Yeah. it's more depth, but you don't need to track that many things because you only have 8 models. And there's way fewer special rules, actually, I would say, than there are in
I would agree.
index cards now, because every unit has an ability, a leader ability, something like that. So yeah, super fun game. It was very close, lots of back and forth. It was a great refresher for me, which I'm going to need because I'll be refreshing a lot of people come our game day next weekend. But also, it's always fun, and it instantly made me want to play more Necromunda.
Of course, so it did.
Perfect time to kick off a campaign. So
of course,
yeah. And then Adon was in town here, so he and I threw down on a proper combat patrol. So I brought my Necron combat patrol out against his orcs, and I didn't realize that Don was working on orcs, but he has a very nicely painted army that Ned from our Facebook and Discord has done most of, if not all of the painting for him. Really, really good looking models. Orcs are in a really cool place right now.
Yeah.
I have not played a lot of orcs since probably 6th edition.
Yeah.
I played almost exclusively against orcs in 5th and 6th edition.
Orcs are like my bane. I just can't seem to crack them.
They were so hard. So I've killed so many boys, but now they're toughness 5. They're 2 wounds each. They still have terrible saves. They still hit on 5s with shooting.
Boys have 2 wounds?
Boys have 2 wounds and T5.
Buddy.
They're pretty survivable.
Are they more expensive?
I'm sure they are.
Oh, please be more expensive.
But a pile of boys is going to take some work to get through. This was an interesting game because he outshot me and outfought me. And when you're out shooting Necrons, it's a bad day for Necrons.
Yeah, for sure.
I have one photo in there.
No, you were going the right way. I put the slide.
Oh, got it.
There you go. Oh, look, who's that guy?
That's Adon. So the table next to us was taking. I
would like to point out in the background.
Yes.
This is Sky's new store.
Yep.
This is the non GW side of the store, and all that Games Workshop stuff, including a ton of Old World stuff sitting there. Sky
is well stocked.
Oh, man, I'm telling you, if you are looking for something for Warhammer 40,000, or fantasy, Age of Sigmar, whatever, and you're like, oh, I can't find this thing anywhere, please reach out to Herrick Games.
Yeah.
Like, he has so much stock. It was ridiculous how much stock he has.
If it's not on his website, he probably has it anyways.
Yeah. Now that being said, I mean, there are things that he has sold out of, et cetera, but chances are I found stuff there I was looking for.
He's got it. He's selling it at a discount, just like anybody else.
Yeah. So Herrick Games. The link is in our sponsors.
And Patreon supporters get an additional 5% off from Herrick Games. So you are getting the best deal on 40K you can find right now.
Yep.
Definitely check it out. So we had a super fun game. It was really close back and forth for the first couple of turns. I took a pretty early lead on the points. Mm-hmm. We were playing one of the combat patrol missions where the center objectives, you get notified a turn ahead of time and then it disappears.
Yeah.
So at the end of the game, there's only 1 center objective left and 2 in each of your deployment zones. So there's only 3 at the end of the game. I was able to put some pretty decent hurt on his Killican and his boys, 1 unit of boys, but he had a 2nd unit of boys, which I wasn't able to do much to.
Does this Killican have an Ultramarine logo on the front of it?
It does. And I don't really know if this was, I think that actually Ned created the lore for this. Adon told me about
stuff Loopy does.
So the reason is that these orcs look up to Ultramarines because they think they're great fighters. So them being orc Ultramarines makes them even better fighters as orcs. They aspire to Ultramarinedom since they so painting the logo and the blue on them makes them better fighters as orcs, more tactical.
That's so funny.
Cunning tactics.
That's right. I love it.
Yeah, so a really, really fun, close game. He had some Def Coptas, which came in and were able to in combat patrol objectives are sticky for battle line units. So I left my backfield objective to like push the advantage, try and take some of those middle ones before they disappeared and get in rapid fire range to let my Gauss guns do their thing. But then his Def Copters ended up coming in and grabbing my backfield objective. And then I got stuck in there. My destroyers mopped up his 1 squad of boys, no problem. And then his war boss came in and cleaned house.
His war boss looks cool.
It's a really
These are really painted well.
There, yeah. Ned always does a great job with all his stuff. And
I love the background theme.
No exception here.
Loopy's involved in that kind of stuff too.
Yeah, absolutely.
It cracks me up.
One of the highlights of the game was we had a war boss on war boss fight.
Nice.
So my war boss or my overlord ended up kind of working through some boys and running over there. We did one thing wrong, which we realized after the fact, in that the data card for the Necron overlord in the combat patrol says he reduces damage by 1, and it doesn't specify to a minimum of 1. So we're like, oh, can he not take damage from a damage 1 thing? Is he just immune to that? So we diced it off because we weren't sure. And the way the dice dictated is that's how we're going to play it for that game. I did look up later on in the commentary.
There's a rule that probably says nothing can be reduced.
In the designer's commentary. Yeah. Nowhere in the book, but had a deep dive into the designer's commentary that no characteristic can be reduced less than 1, including damage. So
okay.
We did figure out I did that wrong afterwards, but Adon ended up winning anyway, so it didn't matter. But we did have a really fun warlord on warlord fight. The overlord did prove victorious. But then shortly after being victorious, there's those backfield.
I love it. I love Ultramarines.
The Killicans coming in.
So funny.
Or not Killicans, the Defcopters.
Yeah.
He as the objectives started disappearing and he was able to take my backfield, the points started swinging his way.
Yeah.
And I was running out of bodies. This is right after my overlord took out his war boss. But then, of course,
here comes the Killican.
The Killican comes in and mops up my overlord.
Nice.
And that was a pretty solid victory for Don's.
Nice.
And it was a really fun game.
Yeah.
And it was this is, I guess, the second game we've been able to play in just a couple of months because we did get our game at Adepticon also, our team game.
That's right.
But just a really good time.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I played up in San Jose at the Guild House.
Yes.
Where the Faultline 40K guys are playing.
Yeah. I'll have to check that out sometime.
It was super fun. And I played against Phil. First game I played against Phil. First game I played against Gene Stealer Cult ever.
Yes.
Wow, what an interesting army.
I'm really curious how they play now. I haven't played against them since early 9th edition.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't tell you how to compare because this is the first time I've played against them. First off, let me just say, Phil and I are evenly matched in terms of how we roll bad. And I actually rolled a little hotter than he did.
Oh, wow.
But I mean, like,
that's saying something.
There, but for the grace of the Emperor go I, like I have witnessed his rolling come from my own hands before. So not like a big shocker there. But we also had like the same temperament and stuff. Like I think Phil would fit in very good with our group as well. But I believe he commutes down from San Francisco, but he like works in Cupertino.
Okay.
So anyway, Phil, I ran my Black Legion, my 1500 point list. This was a 1500 point game. We played, I should start noting the actual names of the missions we played, but we played a mission where there were 3 objectives in no man's land, much like yours. One would disappear in turn 4, one would disappear in turn 5, and the remaining one would be worth like 8 points at the end or something to that fact. We did use the Goonhammer app.
Oh, the tabletop battles app?
Yeah. Super cool.
It does a great job of
I didn't use it. Phil was like, I want to use this. I'm like, cool. I didn't know about it. And so Phil was showing me, and I've now downloaded it, and I will use it going forward. Very, very cool.
It's super, especially because the way victory points are calculated now, like primary and secondaries being separate.
Yeah.
They have been, I guess, for a little while now, but those pools are separate. So you can't just have a running victory point tally. Like,
right.
'cause you'll eventually I already maxed out primaries.
Right.
Now I need to figure out secondaries. But the app does a great job of tracking all that stuff.
Yeah. So, couple notable things during the game. My Terminators piled out of a Land Raider and assaulted a bunch of abominations. Abominations? Is that what they're called?
Yes.
So I said that Phil rolled bad.
Yeah.
This was my turn to roll bad. And his abominations wiped up my Terminators in 2 rounds of combat. Like,
does she get to reroll everything with Terminators? Except for saves. But
yes, I do.
Yeah.
Yes,
didn't matter.
I was unable to.
You did not kill enough.
I eventually killed them all off through like last cannons and stuff. But he focused initially in the game on my Havocs, which pretty much were killed to a man in a couple rounds. And then, you know, as I kind of swept around with my Land Raider to try to take out these abominations, I was like, okay, this is going to be a problem. He sat on the objectives pretty quickly. And I was like, oh, he's starting to rack up points. And I was working on my secondary objective points. So
you did full Leviathan second.
Yeah.
I think you said that.
And it was, so as he's starting to rack up points, the other thing he has is some of his units can come back.
Yes. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And the way that works for those who aren't initiated like myself is when a unit dies, he puts down an icon to represent that unit coming back somewhere on the table. Now, the thing is, if you can get within 8 or 9 inches of that icon, you can prevent it from coming back.
Okay.
So he told me this early on, how somebody had done this and prevented him from coming back. So I'm like, oh, file that one away.
That happens in his next command phase or something?
It happens.
A time trigger, I'm assuming.
Yeah. I can't remember the exact time it happens. Like he puts them down, but I think in like after my movement phase, they come out or something to that effect. I know I'm probably not 100% correct there. Timing is an important piece of that. And I believe it is after my next movement phase. So at one point in the game, I wipe out a couple of his units, and as I destroy the units, he puts down the marker. He's like, okay, I'm going to put one here and one here because I don't think you can get to those. And I said, okay.
Can he put them anywhere? Or does it have to be
put them anywhere on the board?
It's not like it has to be within 3 inches of where it died. Okay.
No, anywhere on the board.
Yeah.
And have them come back around that marker. My Demon Prince did a lot of work here. Now
that you know the rules for it.
Holy God, Demon Princes are brutal.
Yeah.
And like I destroyed a Lehman Russ tank. I destroyed a unit. I destroyed another unit. This is later in the game. I Blitz drop in. You know, they fail to destroy this thing, which I thought they should have. They knocked it down to 2 wounds, the Lehman Russ tank. And then the Demon Prince just said, okay, well, I'll sweep over there and just finish that off for you. Love the Demon Prince. Love it.
Nice.
So, but the interesting thing, and this is where his 2 markers come into play, and I don't know that I have a picture necessarily of where they were, but he had set them pretty far from where I was, kind of towards the center of the board. By this point, the points are kind of swinging a little bit, but he's still in the lead. But what ends up happening is he has 2 units that are going to come back at the end of my movement phase. And he has a unit of his guys somewhat near the 2 units. And I'm like, oh, I have nothing that can get over there fast enough. I go, wait a minute, I got this Demon Prince that can move 12 inches.
Yeah.
If I run, and I kind of pre-measure it, I'm like, I need to roll like a 5 or 6.
Oh, yeah.
To make this so that I can get within 9 inches of both those things and keep both those units from returning.
Yeah.
My Demon Prince won't do anything else that round.
But he can't charge for running, but.
So I go, well, wait a minute.
But that's effectively killing
there's a
2
unit
units,
over there. And I measured out and I go, but if I charge that unit.
Oh, okay.
I roll 2d6 for the charge.
So it's not after movement.
I move my 12.
Yeah.
And then I charge. And I'm like, I have a better chance of charging that unit and preventing, and then I'll stay like within, just in the inch of that unit.
Yep.
But if I get a good enough charge, like I can swing around the back of that unit and then be in position to stop both those things.
Yeah.
And so sure enough, like I move my 12 and I roll my charge and I roll like a 9 or 10. And I'm like, oh, perfect.
Yes.
Stop both those things from returning. I'm like, he shouldn't have told me that. But in the end of the game,
it's good not to have those gotcha moments when you're playing against an army.
I'm used to playing against Necrons where they keep coming back and that kind of thing.
Sure,
but by the end of the game, I wrap up the final objective worth 8 points, but I also score something worth 10 points. And like, I end up being able to squeak out a victory at the end. But I got to tell you, like Phil was such a great opponent.
Nice.
And like, I hope he had as much fun as I did, just like watching his army. And he has vehicles that they both can draw lines to your guy. You get bonuses. I mean, I'm not going to be the best to represent the Gene Stealer cult and their rules because there's a lot going on there when you've only played one game against them. But man, it was a ton of fun. And Phil was a great opponent, and I'm hoping to play him again sometime. And I'd love to play against Gene Stealer cult again too. So Good stuff.
That's
That was
awesome.
good stuff.
Sorry, I was just reading the Cold Ambush rules for Gene Storm.
Yeah, who knows? Demon Prince did a lot of work. A Blitz did a little bit of work, not as much as I would have liked. Forge Fiend with ectoplasma cannons,
Crushing it.
just rocks,
Just melting faces.
oh my god, and then remelting them.
Yeah.
And that thing took out a couple units too. I mean, just and the best part is like he would knock like a bunch of wounds off of stuff, and then like my command phase would come. I'm gonna spend this command point on whatever his flesh mend, or I can't remember the power name that basically heals me up 3 points.
Sure,
so like
yeah.
I just kept keeping them like
Nice.
just out of getting destroyed, and it lasted the whole game. So it was great stuff. So anyway,
Fantastic.
yeah. So that's my games played. That's our hobby progress. Let's take a short break. We'll come back. We'll hit the main topic of the show. Again, we may do this all in one segment. We'll see how it's going, and then we'll see where things go. But yeah, it was a great week. And I would reiterate, like, I think 40K is in such a great spot right now for me personally, that I'm super excited. Like, this is why I'm going down to San Jose to play. Yeah. And honestly, if we weren't recording tonight's the night that they play, I'd be down there playing. So I have scheduled a game next week on Thursday night to go down there and play.
Yeah.
And I don't remember what I'm playing against. Some other Xeno scum.
That's awesome.
So
I burned the candle at both ends a bit in anticipation for Adepticon, doing all my game prep for Legions Imperialis, learning how to play the game, but then also painting it all. So like I needed just a little balance, especially with the home life thing. But I'm definitely excited for more 40K, especially as summer's hitting now.
My anticipation is going into the narrative up at the Tacoma Open.
Yeah.
That I'll be really well versed on how to play my army by that point.
Absolutely.
I'm so much more confident. Yep. I'm so much more confident. The book, I mean, look, I've seen the leaks, right? I couldn't help myself. I had to look. I'm buying it. So the book, I don't think changes a whole lot that really impacts me. I do like that they're changing the way the dark packs work. It works against me slightly, the change, but I mean, not horribly, is basically you have to make your dark pack roll before your attack. So you could potentially lose guys before you even get to shoot or attack or whatever. But I make liberal use of those dark packs. I don't care.
Sacrifice. Yeah.
I don't care. I use them all.
Got to pay to play.
I love it. Nice. I love it.
It's thematic.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So, all right. So we're going to take a short break and we will be right back. All right, and we're back, and this is the part of the show where Carl does a lot of talking. Good thing I talk so much.
Just because I skipped 4th edition.
There you go. So, The Lost and the Damned. I figure the whole impetus for me kind of doing this episode was it's historically, it's a very interesting, I don't even want to just say list, but like concept, right? And where this really stemmed from for me was like the first time, and one of the reasons I did a Black Legion list was because of Aaron Dembski-Bowden's Black Legion book and Talon of Horus.
Yep.
And I don't remember where I was, but I was watching Aaron speak at one point about the Black Legion and like what it means when they come and fight. And he gave this, Aaron's so good at being descriptive.
What it looks like,
almost,
what it entails.
Almost as good as Alan Bly was. Yeah. Alan Bly could tell you a story and you'd just be like, he's such a good storyteller. But Aaron is really great written word story. But as he was describing this thing to a group of people, he was talking about when the Black Legion attacks a planet, it's not just like a bunch of Chaos Space Marines show up.
Right.
He goes, the skies go dark with the number of ships that appear in orbit. And then
it's like a Tyranid invasion.
Yeah. And then there's, cultists and, mutants and demons and traitor guard involved in the initial waves. And then the Chaos Space Marines make themselves and demon engines. And, and he was describing this, just fantastic visual of, this is why Abaddon is feared. This is what the 13th Black Crusade can conceivably be. And this was all, I think, before we had the successful 13th Black Crusade, the retcon to that and the destruction of Acadia and everything. And so when you saw like Acadia get destroyed, it was like, this is pretty interesting. Like from my perspective, how they approach the fight. So the Lost and the Damned aren't specific to Black Legion. It's a generic term in some regards to humanity, Chaos Space Marines,
renegades of all sorts, deserters.
Yeah, deserters, renegades, traitor guardsmen, all those who have fallen to chaos. The Mechanicus, Adeptus, the Dark Mechanicus, that have all fallen to chaos, and it's kind of a catch-all term for those that have fallen to chaos. But it did have some specific rules around it at one point. So I think the first mention of the term the Lost and the Damned actually came from the books that Jody brought back when we were doing the original, first rare 40K things, which was the fantasy chaos books that kind of bled into the 40K world as well. That was really the first mention of it. But the next big mention of it is in Codex Eye of Terror.
Yes.
Which was the 13th Black Crusade that Games Workshop ran as an open campaign that everybody got to
on the internet in early internet days.
I wish I'd played around that time. Like that sounded like a really cool event. But and certainly people still talk about it to this day.
Yeah.
And that's 4th edition.
End of third, early 4th. One of the that unfortunately dropped when that was post high school for me, and that was early days of college. So I was not playing 40K because there was no community.
Yeah,
at the time.
The next mention of it for me that I'm aware of is in game terms is Imperial Armor 13, which I was just reviewing. It's called War Machines of the Lost and the Damned.
Yeah,
and I was just reviewing, going back through that book. And I miss those days. I miss the days of Forge World having like separate models and rules. I get that they're trying to be more cohesive, and it actually makes more sense, but there was something special about like,
absolutely.
Oh, you're bringing this thing and just that book
the production value was so much above and beyond what you're getting out of GW Prime codexes and things like that.
That Imperial Armor 13 in particular is really great. Like you get like a lot of these war machines that have like histories to them and all this stuff. And it's a really fantastic book. I'll touch on a couple points there. So anyway, I've kind of described what the Lost and the Damned are at this point. But effectively in 40K, especially around Codex Eye of Terror, and even today, I think the concept is it is a chaos horde army.
Yeah.
Right. You are utilizing lots of cheap troops in the initial waves, followed up by Chaos Space Marines, being the backbone and linchpin of them, probably led by like a Demon Prince or something along those lines.
You've got all the tools and tricks that Chaos has access to, not just relying upon elite Chaos Marines.
Right.
Yeah.
And so let's talk a little bit about each section of what these things are. So the first things that we describe are cultists. They're kind of like probably one of the weakest aspects. I mean, some could be, minor demons like, Nurglings and that kind of stuff. But let's steer clear of that and talk cultists.
Yep.
And in particular, I wanted to touch a little bit on chaos cults and how they kind of operate, because as I was doing a bunch of research on the episode, I mean, we also know cultists as small, cheap units you put on the table, but how does one kind of like form?
How do you aspire to be a chaos cultist?
And there's like probably 1,000 different ways that cultists kind of form, but a couple things that really stood out to me that I wanted to point out was what the objective of a chaos cult is. The objective of the chaos cult is to kind of survive initially, but eventually get into positions of power to dominate society. So to spread the word of the gods
influence.
Yep. And expand chaos worship within a planet, a location, a system, whatever.
Sacrifice yourself for demons as needed.
Right.
Be the gateway.
And this is why, like, the Inquisition and, everybody is so, like, trying to find, like, the seeds of where this starts so they can stamp it out before it begins to spread. They'll generally be very, clandestine, right? They'll be secret. They'll be operating initially in secret.
Right. Yeah.
And I think a lot of times we think about this as like, oh, they're just the dregs of society. Oh, necromancy. Oh, they'd probably flourish down in the underhives. And
I'm sure they would.
Sure, but what are they going to achieve there?
Yeah,
right. Like not a whole lot. And so one of the really interesting things as I was doing this research that came out, it was like extreme political organizations.
Oh yeah,
are ripe for chaos cult like takeover. When you think of cultists, we think of these like poorly equipped guys on the table, but chaos cultists themselves could be influential members of power that may honestly institute themselves through just political means into a situation and be able to take over a planet.
Yeah. If you have a planetary governor who's a chaos devotee to chaos, right? Yeah,
and you can guarantee it's not just the governor,
right?
It's like everybody else that's supporting him.
From the top down is going to be corrupt, but it's going to be subtle. It's not just skulls left and right.
Right. Eventually, they'll get there.
Eventually, yes, but including his skull will be collected.
But I hadn't really thought of that before, and I mean, I guess we see that in like books like Eisenhorn and stuff, where but yeah, I mean. What easier way than to like kind of go into the system and then corrupt it from within?
Very similar to gene stealer cults.
Yeah. Right. So, the cult could literally take over a planet without a war.
Right. Yes.
I'm not going to say bloodless, but they could probably take it over. All right. So you have cultists as kind of part of the Lost and the Damned. Then next you have mutants. Mutants are those individuals who typically have been affected by the powers of chaos that have caused them to have mutations. But that's not the only kind of mutant either.
Yeah.
They could be mutants because of the environment.
You've got guys with tentacle arms, but then you also have things like beastmen.
Right.
Which are considered mutants. They're aberrant humans.
Absolutely. Yeah. Zangors, beastmen are all mutant.
I love
types.
The beastmen are back. I know I've said it so many.
No, I'm so glad.
How did they perform in your? Oh, maybe that you didn't bring them.
I didn't bring
because it was 1,500 points.
Yeah. I haven't actually.
Next time.
And it sounds like all my points dropped again. By the way.
Oh, in the new points update for the book
across the board.
All right.
Oh yeah.
Better start painting.
Gotta start painting something. But yeah, you have mutants, which I mean, the environment. Maybe they're working in toxic areas that cause mutations, etc., which makes them susceptible to corruption, that kind of thing, right? But you also have they get gifts from gods and that kind of thing. We have those represented.
There's also people that just have bad luck for the environment they're in, but then they're shunned by society. So chaos is the only.
I'll help you out.
The only family that will embrace them at that point, right? So
and as you said, beastmen, like you have aberrants like that,
just genetic mutations that are well and established and are passed down generation to generation. Yeah.
Next, you have like Traitor Guard. And what's interesting is in the Lost and the Damned, the War Machines, the Lost and the Damned book here, they actually had, I was so excited when this book came out because there is in this book, rules for renegades and heretics. And how to run a Traitor Guard army. And boy, I hope they...
In what, 9th edition was when that?
This was
maybe
8th, 9th edition. I really hope they look at a lot of this. And how this was done when they hopefully do Traitor Guard for 40K, because this book really nailed it, and it allowed you to use suddenly, a bunch of this guard equipment and just be bad guys.
Which makes sense.
I'm kind of scared if they come out with a Traitor Guard army or rules for it, because I feel kind of like the Sisters of Battle. I was like, if they ever come out in plastic, I'm going to totally do it.
You pretty much have to at this point.
I'm going to.
Yeah.
Examples of this, the Blood Pact from Dan Abnett, right? That's a fantastic Traitor Guard and kind of just cultist organization, but they're more guard leaning. There are also I kind of put them along with Traitor Guard is Dark Mechanicus.
Yeah.
Right. Though they can be more the backbone of a chaos like incursion. I mean, they're providing all the material.
I feel like they always have more of a specific agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
there's a couple in this Imperial Armor 13. There's this section about the Dark Mechanicus, and there's this thing called the Hell Forges of the Dark Mechanicus.
Okay, yeah.
And I just wanted to read one of these.
Please do.
To you, because there's probably 24 examples, 20 examples of various Dark Mechanicus.
We're all here for story time with Papa Tuttle.
Okay. Crucible Omega. Certain lords of the conclave, and this is written from an inquisitor, Inquisitor Verily Wrath. Certain lords of the conclave have long posited the existence of a domain of the fallen Mechanicus beyond the boundaries of our realms, some believing it a forge world long predating the Age of Strife, which is never contacted during the Great Crusade. Various legends have surfaced of a world of crippled hellsmiths that prostrate themselves before a cyclopean machine altar, sending up venerations in sonorous binaric cant that echoes weirdly through the Empyrean, the warp, and can be perceived by our warp seers when the titles of the Sea of Souls rage especially strong. Excuse me, tides of the sea. It's small and it's a good, okay. Tides of the Sea of Souls, especially strong. I have recently learned of a Phenomite cell whose unhallowed master believes the Crucible Omega very real indeed, and that the altar its population worships is in fact a functional standard template construct system. I have mobilized all available assets to ascertain the current status of this group of adversaries and recommend the convocation of the conclave at the earliest opportunity to debate this matter further. I mean, imagine that, like you have a standard template construct that is now corrupted by chaos.
Yeah,
and like,
right.
What is it putting out? Right.
And just a forge world that has been off the grid for millennia that has fallen into the hands of evil.
Yeah. So it's stuff like that like
that's pretty cool.
Really appeals to me. And like here you have like these guys, the Dark Mechanicus are the ones that are basically creating demon engines and, you know, the vehicles and things that, you know, are corrupted that all of the chaos forces are using. I love that concept as well.
Absolutely.
So God help me if they come out with Traitor Guard and Dark Mechanicus. I may have to get rid of an army if that happens, and then just
just lean into chaos at that point, just fully embrace.
As if I haven't already.
Yeah, no, you have. But
so anyway, you know, there are lots of stories where, and honestly, throughout Black Library as well. There's this Word Bearer series. I think it's called Dark Apostle, if I remember. And it details this fall of a planet, and this guy who is he ends up being like a chaos worshiper, but he doesn't think he's a chaos worshiper. And it's like, it's a really interesting like story about his degradation into this, where he's like been captured and he's forced to work on this thing. And I think they've like sewn his mouth shut and all this stuff. And, you know, they're detailing out like the work he's having to do for the word bearers and all this stuff. And it's just horrible. And
sounds pleasant.
And he's constantly trying to like, you know, figure out how can I get away from this? And then like, I think the Imperial Guard or like the Space Marines show up at a certain point, and he like basically is running at him being like, no, I'm not on their side. And they're like, Jesus, look at this chaos guy.
He's like, corrupted. Put him down.
Got him down. Yeah. And like, he's so far gone at that point. Like, he doesn't realize just how bad he looks. I think at one point he's like laying there and he sees his puddle, his reflection in a puddle or something. He's like, oh my God, what have I become?
Yeah.
You know, so it's that kind of thing that really appeals to me about this.
That's so fitting in all the ways.
I talked also during the collection, you know, the rare 40K materials, a couple episodes ago, the first one about the Sabbat Worlds Crusade book. That book in particular, details out the Blood Pact and how they operate and how they work, and talks also about, how occult and then the chaos forces like expand and go beyond just Traitor Guardsmen to now Chaos Space Marines and demons and all that kind of stuff involved. So when we talk about, and so then of course, like the next echelon in the Lost and the Damned is the Chaos Space Marines themselves.
Yes.
And this can be from any kind of real Chaos Space Marine chapter. It is probably not typically like just a renegade so much as these are like full on heretics. Although renegades may be using slave labor and that kind of stuff as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
But when you're truly talking Lost and the Damned, you're talking
even loyal chapters of Marines still have slave labor. Like 40K is not a great place to be.
But I think when you're really talking the Lost and the Damned, you're talking about the full-on Traitor Marines coming from the Eye of Terror. What was the Eye of Terror, and now is the Cicatrix Maledictum.
The Long War veterans.
Yep. So, and then beyond that, you have demons, right? They're summoning demons, et cetera, et cetera. They may be led by a demon prince, the full nine yards. And so, and then even beyond that, you have now Traitor Knight houses.
Yeah, right.
Right?
Yep.
So you have knights walking on the field, and then even going beyond that, you probably have traitor houses of
Titan
legions, right? So, I mean, it runs the full gamut, and that's kind of what we're talking about with the Lost and Damned. Like it's this mad mixture of everything, but really the font of it is probably half of it is all just chaff.
It's the Swiss Army knife of chaos.
You're throwing at stuff, yeah, and so. I want to talk a little bit about how they were represented in the Eye of Terror Codex.
Yeah.
And before I read, before I kind of talk about how they were actually like modeled and what the force looked like, let's talk about how they describe the Lost and the Damned in the Eye of Terror Codex. I keep taking off my glasses. I don't know why I'm doing that because I am old and I need them.
Because it's dramatic for
the Lost and the Damned. The insane gods of chaos have many, many servants. Demons, large and small, mortal slaves, which inhabit the demon worlds and give endless praise to their dark masters through toil, bloodshed, and sacrifice, and the Chaos Space Marines, ever willful and ever the most favored of all. An army of the Lost and the Damned represents a combined force of chaos featuring all of these elements. Such forces will be commanded by powerful Chaos Space Marines, demon princes, or other great demagogue, traitor, or arch heretic who's caught the eye of the chaos powers. Their armies are often insane personal creations pursuing a path of strategy and tactics which defies rational military explanation. Their followers may be disciplined and well armed, backed with prodigious amounts of armor and firepower, or a teeming horde of primitively armed mutants, monsters, and demons. The seemingly insane, unpredictable assaults of such chaos forces are a nightmare for strategic planners and lowly troopers alike. So there it is. Like it's effectively a horde army. And in fact, in the Eye of Terror Codex, now remember, this is for those of you who've really only been around kind of 9th and 10th edition. 40K used to have a thing called Force Org chart. And it was you had to follow, okay, I have to have this many troops. I have to have an HQ unit. I have to have this. I have to have that. Here is what the Chaos Horde army list would look like. And it would pull units from the Chaos Space Marines Codex, the Imperial Guard Codex, and then there were some new entries that they created specifically for this.
Oh, no Demons Codex, though.
No Demons Codex. This was pre-Demons Codex. Demons were part of the Chaos Space Marine Codex at the time.
Okay, right.
Demons came out in 4th edition.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
I remember when they launched. It was right as I
had demons.
Right as I started.
Yeah.
So your HQ was an arch heretic, which counted as a Chaos Lieutenant or Sorcerer, a Chaos Space Marine aspiring champion, or a greater demon. Right, so a demon prince.
Yep.
Your elites would be big mutants, possessed, or demon packs. That's PACKS, not pacts, but packs. Troops would be traitors, mutants, including plague zombies, which they don't have anymore. Gibbering horde. They do now.
They have the poxwalkers.
Poxwalkers, yeah. Gibbering hordes, which were basically nurglings. So they used them as counts as nurglings. Fast attack were chaos hounds, something we kind of have.
Not flesh hounds, though.
Demonic beasts.
Hounds, or the old fantasy, Warhammer Fantasy chaos hounds.
And traitor recon, meaning like sentinels, rough riders, and hellhounds.
Okay. Some traitor guard.
And then your heavy support were defilers, chaos spawn, traitor tanks. So they could use Lehman Russ battle tanks, basilisks, that kind of thing. And then there's, limits to how much you could take. So what's interesting about this, though, is they create some. Okay, let me take a step back. They create some new units in here, such as big mutants.
Yeah.
The mutants. I'm looking through it to see what was specific, and traitors in general. So this was a time too when Games Workshop would make rules for units and did not have models for them.
Right. Yes.
And so I was reading a lot about this, and I was reading about people who were playing during this time. And the interesting thing was, because models weren't available, people would create their own models.
3D printing was not a thing.
No, 3D printing wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
People were creating their own models for this.
Yeah.
A lot of these models were metal.
Yeah.
I actually have one of the old packs of mutants.
Oh, cool.
Somewhere. It's still unopened. It came it was plastic and it came in a bag. At one point I was going to use it. Now, like, the quality of stuff has gotten so much better than that. But the people who fielded this army were kind of like, other people were kind of jealous of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they were like, you have the time,
a modeler's dream,
money, and everything to go and create this crazy army that would be put on the table. I mean, you don't see stuff really like this anymore. I think the closest we get now is that Games Workshop has just released the Slaanesh, like Forces of Slaanesh, right? Which are like Noise Marines and that kind of stuff. But they just it's a PDF you can download.
The index that just released online.
Yeah.
Online only.
Yeah. Which I'm excited about.
Yeah.
I'd love to see them actually do a codex based around it.
Yep.
I think we're a ways away from that. So I just found it fascinating as I looked through like the army creation and what it involved, and the artwork in here is fantastic as well. But for people's ability to be able to go in, like, this was not something that like just anybody could achieve.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Realistically. I mean,
to bring it all together, like to really take advantage of what that list has to offer.
Right.
Like, it's a chaos army. It's a guard army. It's conversions. It's models that don't exist. So you're making up mutants and chaosifying Imperial Guard units, things like that. Like, a lot of cool kit bashing conversion potential. But
that's not cheap.
It's not cheap. It's not, especially to your point, like, a lot of these were metal or metal plastic hybrid models. Mm-hmm. Not the easiest to work with.
I cannot imagine like cutting the head off one metal model and putting a different metal model head on. Like, you need a saw. You need tools to do. Yeah, but I mean,
but then you need like green stuff. You actually have to sculpt that green stuff to get in. And like, plastic glue just melts things perfectly now, where before it was a process.
Yeah, yeah. And so I just feel like it was really an interesting. It was an interesting heyday for Games Workshop for 40K at the time.
Yeah.
Something got lost in the lawsuit that Chapter House Minis.
Right.
Listen, like, you can think of Games Workshop as the villain in this situation if you want. Sure. I mean, have they stretched their IP to the ownership of things like Space Marines or, things that maybe they don't own? Yeah, I'm not going to argue that point. But the fallout from what happened, and for those of you who are unaware, Chapter House Minis was a kind of before 3D printing, was a studio that was
alternative miniature provider.
But they were primarily providing like shoulder pads, doors, kits that you would add on to Games Workshop kits.
And a few staple kits that Games Workshop did not produce models for at the time. That did have codex entries, but no models.
Correct.
Yeah.
And
Wolfguard Cavalry are the ones that stand out the most to me. Yeah.
Boy, Wargamma.com, he made some Wolfguard, those Wolf Riders.
The Thunderwolf Cavalry. Yeah.
His looked awesome, though. His were awesome. But what ended up happening was Games Workshop sent him a cease and desist. They decided to go to court with it. A lawsuit happens. You can look up all this information. The fallout from that is a couple things. One, Age of Sigmar.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Oh, well, Bretonians look too much like
French knights.
Yeah. Okay. Fine.
Can't copyright history.
Fine. Now we're going to have weird chaos and other, everything's weirdified.
Hence unique names, way more.
Imperial Guard is now gone. Now
classic Tolkien fantasy. Yeah. Races, things like that. Yeah.
Even within 40K, Imperial Guard is no longer Imperial
Right.
Guard. Now it's the Astra Militarum.
Right.
For people who are, I remember when Astra Militarum came out as a term, people were like, what is this? This is stupid. They're Imperial Guard. I'm like, this is what you wanted. Like, unfortunately,
this is Imperial Guard copyright protection.
And Chapter House Minis was making, in particular, they were making like shoulder pads and things for chapters that Games Workshop did not have specific shoulder pads for.
Yes.
But they weren't like even hiding it. Like, it was literally like, here are White Scar shoulder pads. Here are Salamander shoulder pads.
Yeah.
And I mean, and their stuff, honestly, it looked good.
Look good.
Yeah, it looked real good
stuff. Yeah.
But because of the lawsuit, basically Games Workshop went back to the drawing board and said, fine, if we can't copyright all this stuff, we're going to make it stuff we can copyright. And we are not going to put out rules for
kits that don't exist.
Yeah. For units that we do not have kits for. Done.
Yep.
And immediately you saw, units disappear from codexes.
Right.
That were there previously, but there were no kits for. But people were already, doing stuff like they'd worked around. I remember drop pods were not a kit for the longest time. And there was a guy online who had made them out of like PVC pipe and stuff. And was like, oh, I'm going to do some of those. And then they finally came out with a drop pod kit, but there was a period where like that stuff didn't exist.
There was a couple stable, like my set Explorers for Tyranids, that model took forever to come out. The Thunderwolf Cavalry was years and years.
It took forever for them to come out with that.
I think a part of that was because of the lawsuit. That
I think so too.
The actual release of the model kit got delayed because of the lawsuit. Yeah. But yeah, that was.
So I mean, this is
years.
Kind of sidetracking a little bit, but this was an age where Games Workshop would just put out rules and say, feel free to kit bash something together and make your own model, take a deodorant roller and make a tank out of it. Right. Yeah. They used to put in White Dwarf how to make something out of nothing.
Yeah. Models and terrain especially.
Yeah. Yeah. And that no longer exists. And I kind of understand why it's shifted that way, but I do feel like something was lost.
I definitely miss that most out of White Dwarf and Games Workshop's culture.
Yeah.
Is that kind of kit bash and modelers mentality.
Yeah. And so, here we are.
Yeah.
But here we are today. Yeah. I mean, it used to be you could not buy terrain.
Right. It didn't exist. Kits didn't exist.
Now I have so much terrain. I can, and it's great. And honestly, the terrain is really great, but it's not as unique as it used to be.
Right.
But now you can use those pieces to make your own unique stuff. Anyway, I'm getting off the topic here. So anyway, my point is, rules were made, models didn't exist. People made this army, and much like earlier in the episode where I was talking about how I won my best painted with my Nurgle Forge World stuff, like I'm sure these people would go to events and people would be like, what? Oh, yeah. I've never seen anything like this. Like, this is nuts.
Very few armories at the time had the potential to have this kind of conversion work or variety of things or scratch building
and it was specific to this codex, the Codex Eye of Terror.
Right. Yeah.
It wasn't even,
it's so thematic,
much like the Imperial Armor 13. Like, it has the rules for Renegades and Heretic Trader Guard. It's like it was nowhere else. You needed it there to play it. So again, I mean, is it good for the game that everything kind of condenses? One would argue, yes, it is. Is it still kind of disappointing and sad that we've lost like a certain amount of like the uniqueness and creativity?
Yeah.
Yes, that can be true as well. Both these things can be true.
I think the game and the culture, whether it's the company culture or just player culture, like the game is more focused and more competitively minded, or it's designed to be.
It's certainly designed
in such a way that it can have a more tight-knit competitive feel. So you're going to lose a lot of that kind of extra curricular flavor and the things that are more out on the peripherals that are really cool and unique and have just really cool like story appeal, but they're,
in particular Forge World stuff, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, Forge World doesn't exist as a thing anymore. You can go to forgeworld.com. It takes you right to Warhammer.
Right to Warhammer.com. And so many of those units are legends now.
Yeah. And this is the other thing. I mean, I remember if you were to go back and listen to some of our early episodes, we were talking about Forge World and using Forge World in games, and that was like controversial as well.
Oh yeah.
Right. I don't know that a Lost in the Damned list was controversial to use at that time, but using Forge World was a thing where it was like, do we ask permission to use a Forge World beforehand? Blah, blah, blah. I mean, that was kind of our general consensus. Hey, I'm going to use some Forge World units. Do you have any problem with that? No, I don't have really any problem with that. And I remember putting a stake in the ground and saying, I think 5 years from now, it's not Forge World in games is not even going to be an issue. Like people won't even think about it. And for a while, it actually that came to pass.
Yeah.
The LVO guys were using Forge World units in their stuff. And
the ones that still exist are just part of indexes now.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I don't know.
It's definitely scaled back.
I love the legend stuff.
I know. Yeah.
It hurts my wallet and my, and my heart a little bit. So anyway, okay. So that's where it stood. It was kind of in this unique space, right? And this got me thinking, and then again, this was before the codex got leaked and I saw pictures of it. It got me thinking, how would you represent the Lost and the Damned in 10th edition?
Yeah.
Like, how could you do that? Lo and behold, the codex comes out and there is the Chaos Cult detachment, which is effectively the Lost and the Damned list. It's designed to use cultists. It's designed. And if you look in the entry, now you have Trader Guardsmen in the entry, which, I mean, I bought a box of them just because of it. They're a kill team box. Yeah. The models are fantastic.
Yeah.
I think most of the models are from Blackstone Fortress.
I think they are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
You can't use any guard vehicles, which is just one.
Unfortunate, but fair.
Give me one. Give me like a troop transport. Like that would be super cool, right? Just thematically, it would be cool.
Gotta have what's the Hellhound?
Yeah. I figure you just take a Hellhound, call it a Rhino.
Yeah, Chimera. Yeah.
Yeah. Or a Chimera, excuse me. Take a Chimera, call it a Rhino. And, just
throw a Rogel Dorn in there for flavor.
But how can you do it now? And then as the leaks came out, and then the people who are receiving the codex in advance, which is not us at this point, we used to receive that stuff in advance and we begged off, and now I haven't reached out to them because honestly it's more headache than it's worth. In some regards. But Goonhammer released an article, all about the Chaos Codex. Like they were talking all about the different detachments and everything. And in particular, they did this detachment focus on the Chaos Cult, which is really, really good. Reading through that, I would highly recommend going and reading the article. They did such a great job in this particular article. I like how they broke down like, oh, do you want to know about this? Do you want to know about that? Do you want to know about that? And you can click those various things and it'll take you to those.
Yeah, it's got links that are indexed in the page to take you
It's
where you
really well thought out. But here at the crux of the list is the optimal, and I'm reading this paragraph from their thing. The optimal list for this detachment will likely be 2/3 cultists and guardsmen, with 1/3 of your force generally being good CSM damage dealers that gain little synergy from being in this detachment, but provide enough pain that your opponent can't just rush your rabble without any care. So there you go.
So you're gonna have obliterators and some demon engines and
Maybe
then a ton of
Havocs.
cultists. Yeah, Havocs.
Right? Demon engines that's always a good sell. And I'm telling you that Forge Fiend is so freaking good. And I think my points went down. Went like 10 points. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe they lowered
But now
them.
the plasma costs double.
It used to be super cheap.
Yeah.
Like super cheaper. And then I think they bounced the points up. And there you can see how it's kind of bouncing around.
Finding its natural.
But my
point
point there is made. Like 2/3 cultists and guardsmen.
That's a horde.
Or I would argue
horde.
beastmen as well.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, right there, you have a cheap, like I think going off my memory, I think cultists are like 50 points for 10.
One of the
and granted,
cheapest units.
Now they don't get like auto guns and stuff. They get just a close combat weapon and a pistol.
Yeah.
And people are all up in arms about that because the old cultist models have, call them part of your trader guard.
Yeah.
Because the trader guard get access to those things. And I think that's actually why they made that differentiation. And the new Chaos Cultist kit just has pistols and close combat weapons, which is fine.
Right. It's what people can buy now.
Yeah.
That are starting.
And I know people are upset. Oh, my cultists are all not usable anymore. I just call them cultists and until you get some repainted up or whatever you want to do. Like nobody's going to give you a hard time about that.
Right. Yep.
Even in a WYSIWYG environment, I think if you just go, look, these are cultists clearly. It's people were laughing about, oh, well, I guess he just uses auto gun as a club now. It's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, pretty much.
He's out of ammo.
They're out of ammo. It makes sense. Yeah. They're not elite.
But I love it. Like in my head, I can already picture like tons of cultists, tons of trader guardsmen, which I think are 75 or whatever, 70 points for 10. I mean, I think, is it a good competitive force? I don't know the answer to that. But thematically,
super thematic. I'm sure it'll be a lot of fun and very different without having to change a ton of stuff in your list. Like you obviously have already picked up these things in anticipation of being able to field this, but
now
that's pretty exciting.
What I'll say that I think is missing is I would love, and I talked about this originally when I was doing Chaos Space Marine, the Black Legion. I had envisioned in my head this Chaos Space Marine force with then demon engines, kind of Chaos Space Marines, bigger Chaos Space Marines, Terminators, Obliterators, demon engines, tanks, then 2 Warhounds and a Knight, right? Like if you think about it like in steps, like stages, as it's coming toward you can picture the smallest stuff, then the bigger, then the bigger, then the bigger.
Warhounds are bigger than Knights. What?
No.
Warhound.
Oh, excuse me, not Warhound. War Dogs.
Okay.
War Dogs.
Yeah, I figured you were meaning something else.
Thank you for correcting me. Yeah, War Dogs and Knight. And I have this Chaos Knight that I was going to be like, okay, there's Chaos Knight and these 2 War Dogs next to him and they kind of, act as this as he does. And just thematically, I thought it looked cool. And it'd be really cool to have like tons of cultists and stuff out in front of it. Lo and behold, I can either take War Dogs or a Knight. I can't take both in the list. Like it's just not allowed.
Is that because of percentages?
Index. It specifically says in the index. Yeah. Now I don't know what the codex says.
It's like Black Legion sounds like you need to play some 3,000 point games. So you can bring all your toys.
If that were the point, I would be playing. I'd love to play like a huge game. The other thing missing here are, you could ally in like some demons.
Yeah.
But and I think that's all that's really missing. I mean, Demon Prince is in it. It's pretty solid right there. But my point is, when I think about this kind of list, and actually when I think about list building in general for Chaos, since I am not a competitive player, the first thing that appeals to me is visually on the table. Not even on the table. Before I even talk about the table, like what in my head, like visually does this force look like?
Right.
Like as a cohesive unit. And in fact, my Black Legion, I feel like I should have more corruption in them than I have now. Like I kind of went for like, look, they are disciplined. Their armor's taken care of. They're the Black Legion. They are the largest force of Chaos Space Marines in the galaxy.
Right.
Now I'm like, maybe I should dirty them up a little bit, give them a little more, mutation here and there. I'm going to start adding some possess to them and that kind of thing.
Yeah, cultist and possessor form.
Right.
You can still bring those elements.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when I visualize this stuff, like that's what I'm saying, like visually in my head, I picture out like, here's what it's going to look like. And when I was initially picturing Black Legion, it's this backed up by this, backed up by this.
It's funny, even how you're describing that is the wave and the wave and the wave and the wave. Super thematic to Black Legion. Yeah.
And so as I think about a Lost in the Dam list, I don't know if it'd be competitive at all, but like I would love like tons of cultists.
Yeah.
Backed up by Traitor Guardsmen, backed up by Chaos Space Marines, backed up by the heavier Chaos Space Marines. Now, I recognize in a 2,000 point game,
you can only have so much.
You can only have so much. And so it may be something that I only break out for like a 3,000 or bigger point game and be like, hey, let's do this like super thematic thing.
Absolutely.
I've been thinking lately, like I have so much cities of death terrain and all that stuff. And I have the Forge World boards for the cityscape stuff that I'm like, I'd love to set up like a huge game here, just get like 3 guys per side just to do a big old city fight over like the course of a day.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
I think it'd be super fun.
Absolutely.
Where we're not worried about like, I'll just make up the mission and then we're all at it. There's a lot of things I want to do in 10th edition. There was that cities, city campaign set that came out where you had the thing you hung up and it had the pockets and you put the parts of the city in each pocket. I'm trying to remember the name. I have it in a box in that closet.
City fight as
it was
part of the.
It was like
Empires?
a camp. No, I'll show it to you afterwards. And
I don't remember that one.
We'll take a short break when we in this segment, and I'll mention it at the closing of the show. But I'd love to. I don't know. There's so many things I want to do now, especially that I'm so fired up about 10th edition.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So anyway, Lost in the Damned. I mean, I think, you also have this dark commune, which I'm not quite sure how to use them yet, but I think it has like, they're basically like the leaders of like the cult, and
right. Yeah.
And let me tell you, they're a horrible kit to put together. Like one guy in particular is like really crazy to glue together.
And the dark commune for everybody else. That's all the mutant guys.
No, well, yes, but no.
Some mutants and some.
No, that's the
Blood Pact. I'm mixing
the accursed cultists.
The accursed cultists.
Yeah. The dark commune are kind of like the leaders of the cult. And there's like a psyker and there's like, it's like a group of like 5 models and they all have like these different, again, they're cultists. I don't think they're particularly
upper
great.
Echelons of cultists.
Yes, that is exactly correct. So anyway, I think there's a lot of modeling opportunities here now.
You know what? So sorry to interrupt.
No,
it's just striking me of like, you're going to have 3 wildly different armies with completely different play styles that are so thematic inside of one codex.
Yeah.
And that is awesome. Like,
and I think there's even more. Like as we were working on Shell's Night Lords, I'm looking at
there's 8 detachments.
This is the detachment you were probably going to want to use.
More detachments than anybody else. But like from what you have and the directions you're already going and what you're painting on and what you're excited towards, like you already have 3 very unique armies within one greater army right there. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And I think the thing I'm most excited about, listen, like people used to poo-poo all over the fifth edition Chaos Codex because it wasn't the 3.5 edition where you could take all these marks and they've kind of brought marks back. But the thing that I will always say about the Chaos Codex is it has been the Chaos Space Marine Codex in particular. It has, in my experience, been something that has, whether it's performed well or not competitively, has allowed you to play the army in a lot of different ways.
Yes.
Very few codexes, I think, give that amount of flexibility. Even the Space Marine Codex, I would argue, does not give that amount of flexibility. The Chaos Space Marine Codex has allowed you to, like, in the way I've usually played it is, hey, I'm playing Death Guard.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm playing Thousand Suns.
Yes.
This was when there was no Thousand Suns Codex and there was no Death Guard Codex. It was just, I have the Chaos Space Marine Codex.
Yep.
I'm playing Death Guard because I saw a cool battle report in White Dwarf that had Typhus. And I was like, oh my God, this guy is awesome. And look, he's got these zombies. And I'm like, this is peak 40K for me.
Right. Yeah.
And it just so happened at the time, my friend Kentaro was like, you realize like that army is tough as nails, right? Like, and I'm like, yeah.
They can take a punch.
And then they're all metal. Okay. I go, well, look, they got these Forge World ones, you know. And,
they're not metal.
I'm going to drop the money on these Forge World ones. And
I loved that army. I would play that army exclusively for the longest time. Meanwhile, like I played against another Chaos Space Marine opponent who had a bunch of Slanesh stuff, and and I was like, oh, this is
Wildly
very different.
Yeah.
So, but I think now as you were just mentioning, the new codex is allowing me to almost, and again, I have to see the codex and see, I'm sure there's some restriction, but almost unlimited amount matches the vision I had for my armies.
Yeah.
That being said, I don't know that I can have a knight and this and that and, what have you in one force. But fine, but it does get me very close.
Hey, figure out whatever that is when you're ready and we'll make it happen.
Well, the way
legal or otherwise.
The way we do it is we go, well, I'm going to play, let's say we were going to play a 3,000 point game, and I'll just go, well, I'm going to play a 2,000 point army and a 1,000 point army.
There you go. Yeah.
And they are not, they don't benefit from each other. They play effectively as two different armies. Amongst us and friends, like nobody's going to have a hard time.
Totally
with
fine.
that,
Yeah.
Or, hey, I'm going to play a 4,000 points and I want to use this. Okay, cool. Hey, I want to use this. Yeah, go for it.
Yep. Yep.
We'll make it happen.
I easily have 5,000 points of Necron. So
yes, I know.
So we'll make whatever size battle you want to have.
And so my point there though, is that like, and actually this touches on another interesting point, which is, I'll explain it this way. When I was a kid, when we were all kids, we were our creativity, our fantasies that we drove in our head, whether they're Dungeons and Dragons or whatever, were less constrained
absolutely
than they are as adults. As adults, I think we get shoehorned into, well, boy, I'd really like to do this, but the rules say I have to do this. And the rules are there for a reason. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying as adults, we actually have probably a better comprehension for how we could balance that out for the other side of the situation.
Make it fun for both people.
Yeah. Hey, I really want to run I want to run Chaos Knights. You know what? I want to run an Imperial Knight. Yeah, you should run Imperial Knights and the equivalent War Dogs, and I'll run.
I've got one I haven't used in 5 editions.
Let's freaking do it. What are we doing? It's like you should not feel so constrained, especially in this kind of environment where we are trying to be creative and do unique things. And I think when I do set up that big table, and I've been thinking about how to lay it out, like I've got so much stuff that I'm like, I was thinking a couple of days ago, I could set up like 2 long tables of stuff. Like we'll have like a 12-foot table by 4 foot, and we'll just have terrain everywhere, and we'll invite over 2 or 3 people per side, and
Land Raiders don't get stuck going over.
Land Raiders don't get
Traders
stuck
on a one.
But we'll have knights and blah blah blah. And then I was like, oh shit, should we use Titans? I'm like, let's leave Titans out for now. But my point is, like, as we were just sitting here discussing this, I'm like, well, I'll take a Chaos Knight. And why don't you take an Imperial Knight? Why would we not? Or Eldar Knight?
Yeah, right.
Sure.
Why not?
Why not? Let's make a
got all the
thematic
big toys that,
as long as it's thematic, right?
Absolutely.
Like let's keep it within the realm of this is whether it's Necrons or whether it's hey, I always wanted to do this and it kind of breaks the rules. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Let's see how
I think that's a great thing about 40K, right? The main game is obviously geared more towards competitive play and being tighter and balanced that way,
which doesn't hurt.
Right.
Like, that gives going. I'll finish that and I'll
so that gives you a really good jumping off point. Right?
Yeah.
You have this great foundation of a game that is relatively balanced, fair, and thematic at the same time, but there's nothing to stop you from making that your own. If you want to do a special scenario or incorporate certain units for a game, like obviously have the conversation, don't just spring it on somebody, but
right.
Like to your point, like we have as adults wild imagination that is largely unused in our day jobs.
Yeah.
So we have all this energy that we can put into this, and we have, I think, we've obviously been playing games a really long time, know a bit about game design just secondhand, even if you know nothing else about it, you know it secondhand from experiencing it so much. But you have really good tools in your pocket to bring those two things together. Like bring those, the kind of base set game, and then how to expand that, how to make it your own, how to put your twist on it, but with a lens of how do I make this fun and balanced for everybody.
Yeah.
And if the theme is unbalanced, like go for that too. Like you can lean into that and then find ways to.
I mean, this would be the time to break out Legends units.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Like, hey, do it. I really want to run this thing and it's a Legends thing. Yeah, bring it. I think, and you made a great point about, the focus is on balance and on competitive play. I think it is, which is interesting because the majority of people don't play that way, although it is the easiest way to play because you both rock up to the table knowing the same, hey,
that conversation's been had.
A and B, right? Yeah. One person made an argument, like there's always this argument about narrative versus competitive and blah, blah. And one person made a point that I was like, oh, that's a really good point, which they said, having a tight competitive rule set doesn't hurt the narrative game at all.
No.
But having a loose, unbalanced, narrative focused rule set definitely hurts the competitive side.
Absolutely. Yes.
And I was like, that is the best argument I have heard for the direction that the rules have taken.
Yeah.
Like you're absolutely right. I was kind of floored by that argument. I was like, oh, that's a solid point. All right, point to you.
And in my opinion, the only thing, and this is just because I've been playing since 2nd edition, like the only thing of 10th edition that hurts the narrative is throwing out the force organization chart.
Yeah,
like
a little bit.
It's so open now to the point where gamers are going to lean towards those more effective units.
Yeah, and then there's this
at the cost of some narrative theming and like.
But now there's like this obscure, like no nonsense, no rule. Makes no sense rule about, well, you can only take 3 of, okay. I get that. That's a balancing
unless
thing.
It's battle line, then you can take 6.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I agree with you a bit there. I'm still okay with where we sit at the moment. I love 10th edition. I am not knocking it all. Like I think
agreed.
It has the potential to be the edition I have more fun with than any other since 8th edition. And I really enjoyed 8th edition.
Played a lot.
Until it became bloated, right? 9th, I don't understand what they did again. Why they did that again. And who knows? A couple years from now, we'll probably be right back here saying the same thing.
We'll see.
But that being said, like the Lost in the Dam just spawned this idea in my head of I would love to field like just tons of chaos stuff and I'm not talking like apocalypse level, but I mean, we'd all have a lot of points on the table.
Yeah.
And we just play like a super long game that's just fun and thematic. And, hey, I want to take this unusual thing. What unusual thing do you want to take to balance it out? Or, likewise, we as adults, we can figure out what the appropriate response to that kind of thing is. Where do we fit in the time to play this and all the other stuff we got going on? I don't know, but at some point, I'm working on it.
Yeah, that's set it up with a couple months in advance. You're building, painting, and you're gonna have.
That's a good idea. Like give everybody a heads up.
Yeah, just
we figure out who. It could just be 4 of us.
Set a group, set a date. Mm-hmm. It'll happen.
I think the smartest thing would keep it kind of tight, like 4 people, two per side, and themed, right? What like I saw at the Fault Line event, the Maelstrom Mixer. Very difficult to compact 16 different things into one campaign. It's just
there's so many forces, so many options, so many units.
Yeah. Fortunately, most of us have multiple armies, so we can always make something work, and we can usually make it work as a team. But Jody or Brian playing Chaos alongside me, or Shell playing Chaos at some point, it would be super fun to just break it all down. And then I'll leave you on this one note, and then we'll kind of rock out. But one thing I forgot to mention when I was talking about the Maelstrom Mixer the other day was they had created these cards that they had professionally done. They are playing card size, and these were like single use cards that like the orchestrators of the event would walk around and kind of see like an event happen, like something happened at the table that either worked terribly against you or worked in your favor.
Yeah.
And they'd like reward you with one of these cards. And I have 2 of them here that I forgot to bring to the second day because
No.
I found them in the pocket of my shirt here. But for example, I want to give you, and I could use these were all single use cards. The first one was called Reckless Abandon. And it says, I have seen the future and it is death. Farseer Avenel. When any shooting or fight phase, target a non-Titanic character modeled in your army. Effect. Until the end of the phase, improve the AP of all weapons that model is equipped with by 1. Each of these weapons also gains hazardous. Like not game breaking.
Yeah.
What do you call it? Like there's a specific time and place to use it.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
It's situational.
You got to weigh the odds and
The other one
risk and reward.
was Counter Strike. When during the fight phase effect, you may use the Counter Strike core stratagem for 0 comp, 0 CP.
Okay.
Once.
Yeah.
Right. And they had a whole bunch of them and they were all themed. So like if you had a particularly bad,
you could have used that one.
close combat, I really could use that one. They're fantastic. So just super fun. And I just thought it added another layer to the fun of that event.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So anyway, Lost in the Damned. I mean, I think the point of this whole thing, while I circulated it around Lost in the Damned, the whole point of the discussion is to, as Quato would say, free your mind.
Free your mind,
Right?
Quaid.
Yeah, open your mind. Don't feel constrained. I mean, clearly, if you're just rocking up to the game store, you're playing against somebody else, that's a whole different thing. But if you have the time and opportunity and friends that you want to try and experiment with stuff, like do it in an environment where nobody's going to get their feelings hurt.
Yeah.
It's just, hey, I'm telling you in advance, this is what I want to do. Are you into that? No, I'm not into that. Okay. Is anybody else into that?
I guarantee you, if you bring this to life, it's going to be one of our most memorable games of 10th edition.
I agree.
Right? And everybody has that potential. Just put a little extra time in there, set it up there.
Dude.
It's happening.
We're doing it. It's going to happen.
Yes.
It's not going to happen next weekend because next weekend's the Necromunda thing. All right. Listen, let's take a short break since we freed our minds so much. We'll come back and we'll close out the show.
Hey, this is Carl, and I almost forgot to mention that before we close out the show, we have an interview that was originally released specifically for Patreon members that is with Matt Weeks and Hank Edley from Adepticon to talk about why the show has moved from its Schaumburg location to Milwaukee. And I think that this was originally intended just to be for Patreon members, but the topics discussed here, especially if you go to that event, are worth kind of everybody hearing. So we have included that interview here, and then we'll go ahead and close out the show. So sit tight and enjoy. All right, so I'm here with Matt Weeks and Hank Edley of Adepticon fame, 2 people I absolutely adore, and I'm thank you for taking the time to talk with me about Adepticon last year, I guess this year, 2024, and where we're going to be in 2025 and everything around that. So thanks so much for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Carl. It's been a long time.
So yeah, I mean, it's been over a year now because I made the poor decision to go to Australia instead of Adepticon. I got to tell you, from afar, I was looking at the pictures and videos people were hosting and posting, and I kept every day I'd be like, did I make the right choice here? I don't know, but once in a
I think it's been a long time since or at least I've been talking to you even on the IC. So
yeah. So let's talk real quick about how this year went. Obviously, a bunch of my crew went, Josh and Jody and Aaron and a bunch of guys, and they came back just again absolutely loving it. from your perspectives as the host organizers, the event organizers, how did things go from, I mean, we've had years, Matt, where I've seen you walking around with your head about to pop because things aren't going right. How did things go from a technical and scheduling standpoint this year from your perspective?
Surprisingly smooth. I mean, for the scale and the growth and everything else that comes with it. I think having those 2 years off due to COVID and then coming back in 22, we were a little rusty.
Yeah.
The wheels needed some oil. And, that first year we were like, oh yeah, that one thing, we're not supposed to do that, or we should have done it this way. Or
Right.
we were kind of remembering how to do everything again. So, and then things started getting better for us. Like we got back into the groove of it. But this year things really exploded for us in the sense that, we went from somewhere in the neighborhood of around 800 events to close to, I think, 1,300 or something like that.
That's
it was
massive.
A significant jump in events. A lot of that was due to the way, say, like they broke up like BattleTech and stuff.
Sure.
It created a lot more events, but there's just a lot more moving parts within the system and tickets for people to purchase, et cetera. And then we also had, 20% attendance growth in pre-reg alone, which, year over year, I think traditionally we see somewhere around 10, maybe 14 was our highest ever.
Mm-hmm.
So to put 20% up was pretty shocking, I thought, given that, we hadn't really seen growth since, 2020 because of all the COVID stuff. Like we really weren't sure when that would come back or how that would come back. And that, that put some pre-reg numbers up for us. Of course we've grown because of our partnership with Atomic Mass Games and bringing the worlds, all the big Star Wars events and the invite only events and the Marvel Crisis Protocol stuff. That's been a side of the convention that's really grown over the last several years. And has helped drive attendance. So,
yeah.
The other big change, right, was we kind of changed our overall badge structure. In previous years, we had a very limited number of what we called VIG badges, and sort of the convention had sort of outgrown, that sort of structure and mechanic, and we moved to where we had an advanced and a core badge this year, and that really streamlined things for us. Traditionally that VIG badge has been kind of a bottleneck, from a registration standpoint and on-site reg. And then you add to the fact that Matt had the brilliant idea to ship badges this year, and we shipped out, I don't know, close to 3,000 badges. What was it, like 2,800 badges?
Something like that, yeah. Far more than initially anticipated. Those two things in combination, the Wednesday night early check-in, Thursday morning as the event starts are usually insanity.
Yeah.
And I have to say, with increased numbers and everything else, like it felt maybe the smoothest it's had in years. And it allowed us, one, to sort of standardize that swag bag and make it, not necessarily equal, but equitable across the board. And then all of a sudden we were able to get like 2,000 people into that mix, as opposed to the old VIG, which is, impacting a smaller and smaller, fraction of a percentage of our overall attendee base and causing kind of all the problems in the process. Right. So,
well, let me tell you from a user perspective, from somebody who goes there, and then I got the VIG bag, I'd say 4 out of 5 times, of the times that I tried to get it. And the reality was, like, I'd get it, and there's 2 issues with that. One, I flew there, so and you would even warn me, Matt, you'd be like, bring an extra bag for that stuff. And I'd be like, okay. And I still wouldn't have enough room. And then the other reality is, I used maybe half that stuff, and a bunch of it sits on my shelf for a long time until I figure out what am I doing with this stuff. So I mean, I don't think it's great. Like it generates a ton of hype. I mean, people who were potentially going to get into a system may jump into it or give it a try because they've been given something like a starter set. But for me personally, it was the last year. I was like, I'm not even gonna bother with it, let somebody else enjoy it, and so I think that's probably smart to spread it out. Like you said, it's not just hitting a small core group of people. It spreads out the love across many more attendees. Let me ask you,
I think there's been a couple of times where we've had to sort of pause and reevaluate what we do, and I think the first big time we did that was when we were like, hey, we want to put the focus back onto the 40K team tournament because that is our flagship event. And that's encompassing everything that we love about the convention and the hobby and everything. So let's make that, let's expand that from 1 day to 2 day. Let's put the focus back on that event. And that kind of came in tandem with, just really recognizing that Adepticon was more of a social event than it was a competition or anything else like that. And I think, I've, of course, Hank will tell you, been yelling about the VIG bag for years in terms of like, we got to do something with it.
Yeah.
And I think it's a similar kind of thing. It's just sort of like, that wasn't the focus that we wanted, was like everybody, crawling all over, what's the Black Friday and each other to right?
To get a
that
puzzle.
We wanted to put, and we wanted to put the focus back on, the experience of the convention, not the experience of or the pain of registration, really, I guess, right?
So the shipping of badges out to people, I mean, I remember, every day I get there early. I get there the day before the convention starts, but then there comes a point where there's this massive line down the hall for people waiting to get their badges. I guess I'd much rather have my badge shipped to me than have to wait in that line. Yeah. And then I can hit that if I got a t-shirt or something, I can hit that registration thing later when there's nobody there. It's not an issue.
A lot of people figured that out. Yeah.
Yeah. It got to the point where I wouldn't bother getting my badge until I saw that there's no line there. I'll just walk up now, but yeah, I can see that being so much more efficient. So 20% growth in this last year. Had you guys already been thinking about, hey, we probably need to change venues, or did the pre-reg really hammer it home?
No, we have been discussing and actively looking for what, Hank? I don't know. Like, I think we even looked pre-COVID, right?
Yeah, we were already thinking about it pre-COVID. Realistically,
I think it was that decision for us to move into the Hyatt. Like when we had to make that decision, we were already like, do that or do we move?
Right.
Yeah, we were looking at it pretty hard and heavy going into right before COVID, and obviously we had some discussions with the Village of Schaumburg, and they had things in the works and on the books from a strategic plan standpoint to make some expanded parking with a parking deck and potentially expanding the event space. But
but how many years is that going to take to build out? Right?
Yeah, I mean, the wheels of government, sometimes projects get delayed and take a long time to come to fruition, and ultimately those enhancements weren't going to be able to do us any good. So we had to move forward with relocating.
Okay. So one of the questions that came up frequently, and I just wanted to give you guys a chance to kind of address this, and I think I know the answer there because I talked to you behind the scenes a little bit, but there were questions about, well, why didn't it go to downtown Chicago? There's a big convention center in downtown Chicago. Why move it from Schaumburg to Milwaukee? And I'm upset because I live 10 minutes from Schaumburg and now I got to go an hour to get to Milwaukee. But in all honesty, like, why not downtown Chicago? What was it that Milwaukee did for you guys that Chicago did not?
Well, I mean, I think there's two places in Chicago that are kind of beyond the Renaissance, and that would be McCormick Place downtown, and then that would be the Rosemont out by O'Hare.
Yeah.
We looked at Rosemont 3 times maybe over the course of the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And, you know, for me, the most important thing for me is we have built, you know, the community of Adepticon, whether it's the people down in Fort Wapple painting or the people coming to hang out in the bar and play their games or do trivia or whatever it is, there's a vibe, an atmosphere that's created and that was fostered by, you know, originally at the Westin and now at the Schaumburg. When I walk into Rosemont, that all dies.
Yeah.
That it's gone. Rosemont is one enormous concrete columned space, and it just doesn't have the character. It doesn't have the amenities or even the space that people would want to hang out in. It's like you come and stand on a concrete floor on one side of the table. I'll stand on the other. We'll play for 8 hours, and there's nothing else, right? And I felt like moving it to a space where we lost that was like the last thing we wanted to do.
Right.
There's also, of course, the costs associated with those two venues are significantly higher than the Renaissance and significantly higher than Milwaukee, the venue in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
There's the age of the venues. There's, you know, there's going to be a cost associated for parking in Milwaukee or, but yeah, there's downtown Chicago too, like probably 5 times the amount, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know what,
any convention I've gone to, other than Adepticon, literally every convention I've gone to where I've brought a vehicle, like I've had to pay for park.
Sure.
So, I mean,
yeah,
I get it.
You know, I think for us, when we're looking at spaces, you know, we wanted to keep it close to Chicago 100% because, you know, like that just makes absolute sense given just for us logistically and all the stuff that we have, and just our traditional attendee base. And we wanted to keep it, you know, in the same time frame and all of that. And, you know, we looked at everything that was in the striking distance and we went up, I don't know, it was like about a year ago initially. And we did a site visit at Milwaukee while they were still getting the construction going that's wrapping up right now. And I mean, the first thing I was struck when I walked in there was like, oh, this is exactly like the Renaissance, just like 3 times the size. It's got the same, you know, oh, that's the Schaumburg ballroom, but it's bigger, and here's the breakout rooms. And like, I could see us bringing all of Adepticon back under one roof, you know, kind of marrying the Renaissance and the Hyatt events back together, bringing all of our exhibitors back into one big exhibitor hall instead of having them scattered throughout the hallways.
Right.
And still preserving the vibe of what we had created at the Renaissance and simultaneously offering all these extra new things that we traditionally haven't been able to do at the Renaissance, like bringing in food vendors and having food cart kind of things internally, or being in a downtown setting where you can go out to a pub on a Saturday night or go to a movie or whatever and not have to even worry about getting into your car and losing your parking spot. You know?
Yeah. Good point. A short search showed me like a dozen highly ranked eating places within a very short walking distance of the event center. I was
right.
You know, at first I was like, okay, well, for me, again, and this is just my experience, you know, to get there is no longer a direct flight. I have to do a connecting flight through Denver or whatever. But I'm like, okay, I go early. It's not that big of a deal for me. But I think the benefits for somebody coming from a distance like myself far outweigh any perceived drawbacks. You know, I will say having access to additional rooms will probably be really, really helpful as well. I mean, everybody knows how fast the rooms sell out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like,
and that's
4 times everything, right?
Say it again.
4 times parking, 4 times the amount of hotel rooms,
that's fantastic.
times the amount of exhibit space, hall space, everything. Like, it's just infinitely larger, and it's all just like brand new and beautiful, right? Like, it's insane.
I posted a video on the Facebook group of they were interviewing on the news out there, one of the guys in charge of the construction of the new hall and everything. And he was like walking them through, like, here's what it's going to look like. And And I was like, oh man, that looks really impressive. You spoke, Matt, about kind of the feel of Adepticon and the I liken it to like the soul of Adepticon, right? Like for me, it is a social environment, whether it's meeting you there or Hank there or friends that are coming from everywhere, and bringing my friends out from here. It really does. I think you nailed it. It is a social event, and we have all this gaming around it that we do as well. But, and again, that's why when I missed it this year, I feel like, oh man, I missed like my opportunity to hang out that year with a bunch of people that I really enjoy spending time with. Hank, for you, what's the thing you're most excited about the new venue for? And that can be from a behind the scenes perspective, a logistics thing, or that could be, you think people are going to see X, Y, or Z, or what is it that excites you the most?
Well, I mean, it just having the options and possibilities that we haven't really had for a long time in our current venue because of just the constraints that have been put on us from the space that we had. And so, we've for years now have had companies, attendees, events wanting to expand, hobby seminars wanting to expand, all sorts of things that we've had to basically say, unfortunately, we don't have room for it. Now we have the ability to do things like potentially, assuming we can staff it, we could have a 24-hour gaming hall.
Oh,
we can have, we can actually have space to do the bits trading. Again,
instead of putting it in the hall where everybody's trying to walk by and getting crammed in. That's a really good point.
So, I mean, the possibilities of, essentially having, 3 times, 4 times the amount of space, the things that opens up for us to do. That, and quite frankly, I'll just be honest, like, I've worked with Matt on Adepticon for over 20 years. And,
how's that going, Matt?
Couldn't ask for a better partner in putting the show on, but like I will tell you legitimately, the lead up and end of Adepticon for Matt and myself both, like when Adepticon's over with, traditionally we're like,
never again.
Never again. Like we're done, right? Put a fork in me. I don't want to touch it till after Gen Con, right? I mean, Matt for years would be like, it's not, Gen Con hasn't happened. We're not doing it. Don't talk to me. Right. And literally like the Tuesday after Adepticon, he's excited. And so that makes me excited about, the possibilities of what we can do moving to this space and the number of hotel rooms that are connected to this thing. And it's not like, I certainly was one of the holdouts for wanting to keep it in Chicago, giving Rosemont another shot at it and taking another look at it. And, the other thing that was a clear delineation was that, the Visit Milwaukee Bureau, the hotels associated with that facility, the stakeholders of the Baird Center, all the people that I got to meet with and that Matt got to meet with, they were literally, excited about the possibility to have Adepticon come to Milwaukee. They were, accommodating.
Yeah.
And
we're following in the footsteps of giants here, right? With the Gen Con and all of that, like Milwaukee's got that lineage and like, one of the questions I first asked myself, when we were looking at Milwaukee, because, legitimately the airport is a negative, like no doubt about it.
Right.
Like it's not O'Hare, nothing's O'Hare. I get that. And we knew that going into it. But I looked and I was like, what was the size of Gen Con? And they left 2001, 2002, something like that. And they were, about 23,000 attendees at that time when they moved to Indianapolis.
2003.
And that got me looking back through the history of Gen Con. And I was like, this was our 20th event, our 20th Adepticon, and we had about 8,000 attendees. And the 20th Gen Con had about 6,500 attendees. And wow. I now granted, right? Like Gen Con in the 80s, gaming wasn't as accessible.
Right.
The nerds hadn't won yet, like whatever. Like there's no comparing that. That's an apples to oranges.
Times have changed. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But there is there's a path there. There's a trail that's been blazed that we're kind of following. And in some ways that feels kind of, I don't know, historically cool, right? To be there. And as much as I would have liked to have kept it 20 minutes from my house, it's just not, it just wasn't really feasible for us. It's either that or what I would say for the last 2 years, how do we negatively grow?
Right.
Like we can stay at the Renaissance and just say, hey, our max attendee is 5,000, done. We stop selling badges and that's it. This is the event that we can run. This is all that we're capable of doing.
Or you go the Disney route and raise your prices to price people out. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying to do that. That's not what I'm saying, but that's what Disney does.
A little outside my moral compass.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So logistically for the show itself, I mean, you guys are trucking in tons of terrain and equipment and that kind of thing.
Stuff,
yeah. I mean, I was laughing in the chat. Matt, I think it was you that had taken a photo of like a tote in your house and you're like, this is the last tote. I think it was you that said it. This is the last tote I'm taking out to my truck. And somebody said, the funny thing is you're going to go put it out in your truck. You're going to come back and that tote's still going to be there because it's like, it seems like a never ending amount of stuff you guys are moving. How does this work logistically for you guys behind the scenes to go now to Milwaukee versus Schaumburg?
Yeah, I'll let Hank address that. But I mean, you've joined us at least once, right, Carl, for Spray Team?
Yeah.
And that's sort of the Spray Team motto. One more tote. There's always one more tote.
Always one more.
That never ends. But I mean, yeah, Hank can give you the details on the 4 semis and all of that stuff that take a month to load.
Yeah, I mean, right now we have about a 3,000 square foot storage unit that we have pallet racking set up. We've moved to standardize all of our totes. We're probably one of the probably one of the top 10 consumers of Costco black and yellow totes, probably in the US. I'm constantly sending my wife or my kids to Costco to get more totes. But, we took 4 54-foot semis up this year. That's in addition to my trailer and some of the other, U-Haul stuff that people have used.
Yeah.
It's an enormous amount of stuff. We only have one room, one slot for a trailer, so it takes us at least four weekends, leading into Adepticon to get all that material loaded and ready to transport, and then it takes us another. Typically we're not bringing back 4. Hopefully, we're bringing back less, right? So. With everything from the shirts that we're giving away to all the swag bag items and all that stuff. So, we typically have 2 or 3 semis coming back, and we spend the weekends post Adepticon unloading that. And one of the realizations that's pretty and pretty clear to me is we're moving to a facility that has 3 times the amount of space. Well, this is what it takes to get the current space filled out.
Yeah.
Once we start to fill out this additional space, it's not like our storage room is going to get smaller.
Right.
Or it's going to take less semis. It's going to take more. Right.
Right.
The one thing was,
or we become a wargaming and a card gaming convention.
There you go. Yeah. Right.
The only path forward.
Yeah. There you go. But and Carl, you've attended one of the spray teams, and that thing has only grown. We're fortunate to have so many talented people involved with Adepticon, especially on the hobby side, and and obviously we care a lot about putting quality terrain on tables for people to play on. It's a big focus of ours, and people always wonder, like, well, what'd you do with all the terrain from last year? I'm like, well, we're still using it. We just need more, right?
Yep.
And you saw that Games Workshop dropped recently the new AOS rules and the new terrain layouts. Well, guess what that means?
Different.
That means that, that means that the 110, 120 AOS tables that we had last year now don't meet those requirements. Guess what we have to do? We got to revamp all those.
Right.
So,
and last year, we had 120 people playing Lord of the Rings or Middle Earth strategy battle, right? Yeah. So, those types of systems like demand attention, right? Like we need to produce some stuff for that. We can't probably do it all in 1 year, but it's got to enter that rotation with everything else as we finally start to catch up with 40K or Marvel Crisis Protocol or whatever. Here comes Sigmar and Middle Earth and whatever else might be cropping up. So that probably doesn't end, which is good, because when I am in my grumpy anti-post-convention mood, I will often say the only thing I still like about this convention is spray team. So,
well, I do have to say I appreciated you letting me come out and help with the spray team thing, and I'd love to do it again. Honestly, it's all dependent on
you're always welcome
flying out there, right? It's all dependent on cost at this time. But that being said, like, I had seen what it took to run like RTTs and small events and that kind of thing, but getting a behind the scenes look at what it takes to run an event of this size, like, I think most people really don't factor that in, especially when a change happens, and change is always hard for people, but like when a change to move from Schaumburg to Milwaukee, I mean, I think you saw, some negative posts, but I think overwhelmingly the posts were very, very positive and people were very much looking forward to it. But to the people that were struggling with that change, and I think a lot of times people don't consider about just like what it really takes. Like we all get it, as I said, even in this interview. Well, from my perspective, flying out there from California, I have to do this and I have to do that. Yeah. Okay, so I'll adjust to those changes. But that's all I see is my perspective. So seeing it from through your guys' eyes, a lot of times when I see it that way, I go, oh, okay, yeah, makes sense. Like, I still want to go. It's a fantastic event. There's no way I'm going to miss it. Honestly, you could move it a lot of places. I'd still go to it, but I'm really excited about the Milwaukee move, to be honest with you. So
well, and I mean, from my perspective, right? So I didn't make that initial trip up to Milwaukee. That was Matt and some of the other, Greg Sparks and Dustin and some folks. I forget what was going on with me, but I couldn't actually make it up there. And so those guys came back energized about Milwaukee.
Yeah.
And I certainly was the holdout on, well, let's, we can't leave Chicago. Let's look again at the Donald Stevens Center and Rosemont and see if we can make that work. But ultimately, I think for our attendance, they'll have the same reaction I had. And that is, I went up and scheduled a trip up, met Matt up there. He took the train out of Union Station, Matt. Is that how'd you get out there?
Oh yeah. It's fantastic. $25, 40 minutes, 7 blocks away from the convention center.
Nice.
Met me up there. I saw this place. I was there 5 minutes and I'm like,
yep,
this is where we need to be.
Yeah. Nice.
And so I get it. There's a lot of folks that are like, it's not as convenient. But I just kept going back to the fact, 23,000 people got there for Gen Con. 20
exactly.
Before the internet.
Exactly.
20,000 people got there for this Midwest Gaming Classic, which is a retro arcade and console gaming show that's there. And I think once people see it and experience it, there's not going to be any questions as to why we made the move.
Yeah.
Well,
man, I cannot wait. I cannot wait. I missed out this year, so I'm very anxious to.
That's why we actually had to move, because there was a very noticeable absence. This year.
Okay.
Maybe we wronged you in some way. So we need to
yeah, sure.
We need to lure you back, Carl.
There you go.
It didn't take much. Just open a van with and say, "Hey, I have some candy." Well, guys,
a lot of free D6.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me and everybody and let them know kind of what the thinking there was. But you can count on us coming out there. Like our whole group was like, can't wait. We're very excited about it. So we will have a presence there.
I think you will be blown away by this facility, and
I think I will
you
too.
will see the potential.
I think I
New
will.
adventure.
Even my wife likes to go out there. Like I don't know if I told you guys, but we went. So the first year I brought her to Adepticon, she had said, "Oh, well, would you mind if I come?" Like, if you want to come, you're well. Like, let's go. You're in. And so she went, and she had such a great time. She came back. She goes, "Are there other conventions like this?" I go, "Well, no." I go, "But KublaCon here in California was coming up, and I said, we can go to that. It's mostly board gaming, not miniature gaming, and blah blah blah." And, okay, and we went to that. She's like, "This is not Adepticon," and I'm like, "I know. I told you." And so she's very excited to go back as well.
I don't think the owner of KublaCon ran a Shadows of Brimstone private event for you guys either. So.
No, we did get a little bit of special treatment. I'll admit it, Matt. So,
or Call of Cthulhu.
Well, I will tell you, the guys that ran the Space Hulk event, like she latched onto that big time. And then the next year she asked them, "Can I run the Tyranids with you guys?" And they were like, "Yeah, sure." And so she was running the Tyranids, and then she was like, "We should do an event like this at a convention in our area." I'm like, "Okay, well, those guys just updated all of their terrain this year, and Troy sold me his old terrain so that we can now run their things." So.
Yeah, their new setup was amazing.
Oh, man.
Dude,
I shouldn't have talked so much about that event, because now it sells out so fast. Those poor guys get run ragged.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'll let you guys go. Thank you so much for your time. I super appreciate it. And we'll talk to you guys soon.
Good to talk to you.
Thanks, Carl.
All right. Urban Conquest.
That's the one.
That was the product. And it was kind of, look, it's not the best product Games Workshop ever put out, but like it had some interesting concepts to it. It was a city fighting campaign in the 41st millennium, is what it's called. I went and pulled it out of the closet. We're back. We're back.
Howdy.
To close out the show. So anyway, I think again, like the ultimate objective here is just thinking about, okay, we've got a tight rule set. It's cool, but you can always take this to the next level. You can do unique things. You can create unique.
Make it your own in some fun, unique way. That's going to be super memorable. And
you're going to love it.
Like that I already am excited for that day more than anything else right now.
One of the things, I think I talked about this with somebody else too. One of the things, the Overlords, remember the Overlords podcast? Jason Mullins was on it for a while, and a bunch of guys that I know. And, they did an event one time, because they do events at their club all the time. And one event they did was a blind deployment. They hung a sheet between down the table, and everybody deployed their armies. And then you didn't know where everybody was until they pulled the sheet back. And I always thought, what a great idea.
Interesting.
What a great idea.
Yeah, the stuff that you're like, oh, I'm wildly out of position.
Yeah,
no. This is going to work really good.
Yeah.
Like, that's just a fun moment.
I think stuff like that.
Yeah. And if you lose a game, what's the investment? You're going to have a good time losing anyways, right?
Whenever I'm on the back foot like that, and I'm like, oh, I'm getting crushed, I always just pick out like small minor victories.
Yeah, right.
Okay, I'm getting crushed, but I am going to destroy that thing.
And I'm going to talk some smack to it.
And I'll feel good about destroying that thing. And I always talk smack about it. Even as I'm going down.
It's half the fun. Yep. Go down swinging.
Okay. You got anything you want to add?
No,
I thought that was a really good discussion.
Good discussion. I am also very excited for 40K. I know it might not sound like it because I've been in Aeronautica, or not Aeronautica. Well, I was in Aeronautica Imperialis, then Legions Imperialis.
You got me into it just in time. Thanks.
Just in time for the plug to get pulled. I have obviously been spending a lot of time in specials games recently, but I'm very much excited for 40K and getting this Eldar Combat Patrol definitely, and going to the event that is a Combat Patrol specific event. Like, I think that is going to be my jumping off point for 40K, and just have a great summer of 40K. Yeah. I'm very excited for a Necromunda campaign kicking off. So
you and I have always had very good games of 40K. Yeah, so I'm very much looking forward to your Sharkadons or whoever you want to bring against my Black Legion, buddy.
All the fights. Yeah.
I'm so jazzed about this Black Legion right now.
I'm excited for what I've seen of the book, and I think what that's going to bring to you, and just the fun games we're going to have in the future. So.
I like it's not so hugely different. It doesn't seem from the Index in the sense that like because I just spent a bunch of time learning how to play it. And I was like, oh no, but now I'm feeling like, oh yeah, I'm going to still be in good shape here.
It'll be the subtle things that throw you off. I think it was.
I just, and I have a force at 1,500 points, which is what those guys down there are playing at Fault Line.
Oh, that's their standard.
I think because games start typically around 6 p.m.
Yeah,
and they're
timing.
Yeah, they're trying to get out of there by a certain time, and it's like, I mean, I'm getting to the point where I think another couple of games I'll be able to do 2,000 points relatively quickly.
Yeah,
and
2 to 3 hours is pretty reasonable.
Right now, like when I was playing with Phil, I'll go back to this real quick. Because I think I told you this during a break. Phil would be like, oh, he hadn't played a lot of games of 10th, and I think he'd only played like 1 or 2 games with his Gene Stealer cult, and he was saying he had his wife quizzing him.
Yeah.
Like she'd hold the index cards and quiz them and stuff.
That's a great way to learn an army.
Yeah.
I definitely have never thought of that.
But he had to keep going and like looking up the rules, and he'd always go, oh, I'm sorry, I gotta look this up. And I'd like go look up the rule, I'd be like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry I'm slowing the game down is basically what you're saying.
Yeah.
And at a certain point I realized we're both like doing this. And finally I go, hey Phil. He goes, what? I go, how about we just stop apologizing to each other and just look up the rules? It's not a big deal.
It takes the time that it takes. Play a game.
It's not a big deal. Yeah. We're having a great time.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay. And so like and for me, it wasn't like I thought I knew the rule. I just wanted to verify because the last thing I want to do is get stuck into playing something incorrectly.
Right. Yeah. Reinforce a bad behavior or incorrect behavior.
Or tell somebody something wrong. And then, and then you win a game and you're like, oh, but I cheated.
Well, and this guy's the main host of a podcast. He doesn't even know his rules.
Well, listen, that's nothing new.
What, do you get an extra vindicator?
Leave us reviews on iTunes. Listen, we really super appreciate them. If you have iTunes and you have an Apple account and you haven't left us a review and you're liking what you're hearing, leave us a review. If you don't like what you're hearing, you can send us an email to carl@theindependentcharacters.com or josh@theindependentcharacters.com, and we'll be happy to get back with you.
Always
or reach out,
reach
out to us on Patreon, or on Discord. Reach out to us on Facebook. We're everywhere.
YouTube, we're getting a lot of good engagement, comments on YouTube about the episode specifically. So that's been really enjoyable of just people kind of engaging with specific things right there.
Yeah. And
we have a YouTube show.
We do. And please go check it out. Like we're testing out a lot of things. We're doing a lot of things different. We're trying to find our groove there. I think we're getting closer.
Yeah, we keep innovating and iterating on just ways to improve things, and I think we're getting to a pretty good place.
And we are going to do another one of those game show episodes pretty soon. Yes, it's going to be. I've been thinking about that one. It was so fun to do it, and we had such great cast that first time. I want to do another one. We've got new games to play, so that takes a little more setup than I realized when I came up with the idea.
Right? Yeah.
But it was so worth it.
Absolutely worth it.
Yeah. So okay. So next up will be Leagues of Votan.
Show of Force, Leagues of Votan with Dave Taylor.
I know, I'm looking forward to that too.
Yeah,
I think he was too.
The lore, I actually really like what they've done with the lore for Votan.
My God, I've been reading.
Yeah,
it's sick, but it also, we'll talk about it next episode.
Save it for next episode.
There's some interesting callbacks to the original squats in there.
Absolutely.
So. All right. Well, listen, this is Carl.
This is Josh.
And we're coming to you from the Astronomicon, where I'm not just a podcaster for Lost and the Damned. I'm also a player.
And where the Lost and the Damned lurk just outside of the Astronomicon's light.
There you go. And we will see you next time for what's probably going to be a fairly lengthy episode.
This episode of The Independent Characters is protected by the Creative Commons license. If you have further questions as to its use, you can find information on the front page at theindependentcharacters.com.